welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. Today I'm hosting. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, we have Josh Torres.
Hello and welcome back, Brian.
We have Mikhail Matnani.
Welcome back, Brian.
Adam Vitale.
Hello.
Is no one going to welcome back James Galizio?
You didn't introduce him yet, so that's why I was like, it's an awkward situation.
But yeah, and also James Galizio.
Welcome back, James.
Yeah, he had a welcome back, James. Welcome back, me. Chow had a personal conflict, so he will not be here this week. So it'll be the five of us. And yeah, last week I was out. I was visiting an expo, a Comic-Con called Denver Fan Expo. I'll talk about it a little bit. It's not really video game primary, but it's video game adjacent. And then James is back from Anime Expo, which is also video games adjacent, but a little bit more strongly tied in. And James is already, we'll go into it. We have a lot of video game related talks coming out of James's time at Anime Expo. But yeah, we're recording this in the middle of July. So thank you, Josh, Adam, and Mikhail, and of course Chow, who's not here, for covering the podcast last week in our absence. So we're back for this week. I'm not sure exactly what we want to start out with. So I guess we'll start out with just recounting our trips. I think even though I went to Fan Expo, we'll start out with Anime Expo just because there's a little bit more to chew on for that one. And it's also one that we've had a little bit more history with because I know Josh has gone in the past. James has gone pretty regularly for the past couple of years. So we'll start out with James, just kind of open mic in terms of talking about your trip to Anime. Well, trip, you're in the area, but your time at Anime Expo, what you saw there. We'll go into the specific things that you've put together for the site from Anime Expo in the order we have them here in our little timeline. But just talk about generally, visiting it this year. What was the same? What was different? What you saw, and just kind of your impressions of the trip this year.
I guess one thing I will say to start off with is it's been very interesting seeing how Anime Expo has changed over the years. And I'm sure, even though Josh hasn't been the last several years because of moving, he understands what I mean. When even a couple of years ago, you could feel a shift where before, I'd say 2017 or 2018 or so, you could still tell that Anime Expo still had that sort of energy of the smaller companies. There was more of a focus on the smaller companies. You had people like Manga Gamer and whatnot that were in the main exhibit hall, which that's no longer the case. Many of the gaming companies have been relegated to the entertainment hall now, where back then the entertainment hall was basically just for people bringing consoles or playing board games or trading card games. And now the entertainment hall is essentially just a second exhibit hall because of how big the expo has gotten and how they need to make use of the space they have for all of the big companies that want to show up, to the point where even now some companies that would have been in the exhibit hall in the past are now in Kensha Hall, which is no longer just Artist Alley, because they needed a space to put the companies that have been going to Anime Expo for decades and are unfortunately small or of a specific type of thing that they don't want to be showcased loud and proud in the main hall. So that's been a gradual change, and it feels like this year more than anything else that has been never more obvious. It really does feel like Anime Expo is just it. I mean, depending on numbers, arguably, I don't know if we know 100% for sure, but these days Anime Expo is at least comparable size to San Diego Comic-Con and might be bigger. And you can definitely tell with everything that goes on at these shows, the increased presence of the actual Japanese and Chinese and Korean creatives for all these different aspects of it's not just about anime nowadays, obviously. It's about all sorts of anime and the adjacent media, and it's really just fascinating as someone that has been going to Anime Expo for so long to see that evolution kind of fully take place.
Yeah, and also you just don't usually see one of the long running things that you saw about Anime Expo, from back then that you don't really see now as well is, and just the way they structured the event and how they managed the audience and the lines in that event. Like you don't see like that wave or ocean of people at like the main lobby anymore because I think they reallocated like all that sort of management
Outside.
like more outside now as
Yep.
well. So it's been they've been at least smarter with that because that was always just like, man, you can't this is horrific, you know. And I don't know how the situation is outside and that in that respect, but at the very least, it seems like it's at least a little bit more manageable in terms of like how you access the event itself from like the outdoor to indoor experience of like getting in there.
Yep.
But
Be-
as you said, James, like Anime Expo, like you know, back when I was still going, it was mainly but as you said, like kind of the focus is on the anime, upcoming anime. From usually it was like mainly Crunchyroll. Now there's like uh, numerous services that offer it from Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, etc. Does depending
Yep.
on where the licenses end up now, but also because as we've seen, like ever since 2020, like with Genshin's release, just how that space has opened up the door for even more mobile games are always like there ever since like they started being brought over from Japan when they first originated uh in that respect, but Genshin really opened up that space for like a more international presence, as you said, Korea, China, and just in general it like this is a really important event for that space and like for developers of like any anime game, not just for mobile game centric, but any like the Bandai Namco's is like this has always been an important event for them, and that increased presence has only grown. Like for example, like Konami has like an Eden Zero game that's like out in a few days, and they want to do as much promo work as they can for that game, I'm sure, at Anime Expo because that's where your audience is going to be.
So James, I was kind of following your social media as you're going to Anime Expo, but not thoroughly as I should have. I think we were expecting an NIS panel, but it didn't manifest. Or what was the details around that?
So they chose to attend Japan Expo this year instead of Anime Expo.
That's it.
Is that at the same time, or is that later?
It's at the same time. It's in France, though, so
Okay.
it's like literally opposite side of the globe.
So it sounds like a couple of different events were all going on at the same time.
Yeah.
So we do have a few things that you've written up for Anime Expo up on the site, and I think you have a few more things waiting in the wings. Is there any one thing you want to highlight here first off about like maybe something you went in expecting to see, an opportunity that you knew you had going in, and then maybe one surprise that a happenstance encounter with someone you weren't expecting to see, or something like that you weren't expecting going in.
There wasn't really anything I specifically didn't expect heading in this year.
Mhm.
I had a pretty good gauge about what was going to happen at this year's show. The one thing I will say is that there was a lot of behind the scenes last minute rescheduling because of various parties having like delays in flights and whatnot that made it a bit of a challenge to fit everything in that I needed to or wanted to. But I've managed. There's, like you said, there's still a few things that are going to go up. But most of them, the embargoes are actually like weeks away from now. So probably not something we'll be talking about next week or probably even the week after. It'll be probably the very end of the month or beginning of the next month, stuff like that. But there are a few things I'm really excited for people to hear about. In particular, though, some of those aren't directly tied to Anime Expo, but are just kind of happen around the same time.
I have a question because did CyberConnect 2 have a panel this year?
They did, and that's actually one of the things I do still need to get up.
Okay, got it. Because
Not about
we usually like visiting the CyberConnect 2 panel there.
Yeah, the problem is that the scheduling with the CyberConnect 2 panel interfered with like either another panel I needed to see or an appointment that I had already made before the schedule had been fully posted.
Got it.
So, one thing I will say is I did ask them when I sat down to talk with Miyazaki-san again for like the 5th or 6th time was I don't mean this to be rude, but was there anything I missed from the panel that was different from how it's been in years past? And they were like, not really.
Yeah, Cyber Connected has a really interesting angle on their Anime Expo presentations because they sort of double it as like a recruitment drive as well. Of hey, if you're interested in like learning or making getting your boots on the ground in the game industry, we're always looking for people to hire, especially their international audience. If you're willing to move out to Japan and are looking for opportunities for work there, so it's always been interesting to see like Cyber Connect too. Like almost every Anime Expo, they have a panel out. It's like, hey, we have openings that we're looking to hire.
Mm-hmm.
So before we
But
go into some of the previews that you had from Anime Expo, I'll just talk very briefly about Fan Expo. This is not going to be as critical. Fan Expo is a thing I do with friends for the last couple of years. It used to be Denver Comic Con, but I guess Fan Expo is the name of the company, or at least the brand name, that's taken over a few of these different presentations over the last couple of years. Last year, I talked about how the big two presences at Fan Expo, Denver Fan Expo in the specific case last year, were Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and then Baldur's Gate 3. And so I was just kind of curious, like, all right, it's kind of a smorgasbord of a con where it has, nerd quote unquote IPs from across the globe, and from every different like type of media. It's a con where you can see like someone dressed up as Karlach from Baldur's Gate 3 next to Oscar the Grouch. Like that's the sort of con it is. It just that has that like level of variety to it. I think before I left, when I went there, I said, I bet you I see more Expedition 33 at the con. And I did. It wasn't like as big as Baldur's Gate 3 was last year. Baldur's Gate 3 was still huge. But yeah, there were people dressed up in the baguette costume all over the place. It's a very easy and identifiable costume, so I'm not surprised. A lot of people selling art and tchotchkes or whatever from Expedition 33. Still a lot of Genshin. Some Star Rail. I didn't see any Zone Zero for whatever that's worth.
Oh, I saw like of FuRyu stuff. Like I feel like Zenless Zone Zero was the one I saw the most of at Anime
Oh, really?
Expo.
Yeah, I think I saw a lot of Genshin.
I don't know their names, but
most.
lots of the Shark Girl and the Rat Girl.
Yeah, I don't know any
okay,
of their names
yeah.
either. Yeah, but plenty of Claire Expedition 33, Claire Obscure Expedition 33. There was someone that was in like a very handmade, probably hand sewn, hand designed end game Mael costume. So like not
Nice.
just a baguette costume, but someone
That's
like
awesome.
who clearly played the game through the end. Because a lot of these, they're making art across all the IPs and no judgment rendered. Every artist can't play. They might just say, I like this design, I want to draw it, whether or not they've played the game. It's those two things don't necessarily have to be correlated. But then this cosplayer like clearly definitely had and made a costume specifically about that character at the end of the game.
Yeah, they're doing the movements to do Stendhal on random people who are passing by as well. One shot killing them.
There was a little bit of metaphor, but not a ton. Probably because it just kind of released in a period where I don't want to say it's old news because less than a year old, but it didn't quite reach to the wider audience in that way. Not in the sense that Persona was still probably more prevalent, like any individual Persona. Well, at least 3 and on, unfortunately. More into that later. Baldur's Gate 3 was still everywhere, and I think I mentioned this last year. Not a video game IP, but the IP that probably had the single most representation across the artist alley, the panels for like the voice actors and things like that has been Hotel. It's everywhere. Like it is like they have a huge fan base, and I am not familiar, but it is everywhere. And like a lot of the voice actors, like Erica Linebeck plays a character in that show. I can't offhand think of the others, but like a lot of the voice actors in that show do of course have video game credits to their name. So a lot of the actors were there for like getting autographs or whatever, and they list them with their has-been character, but then they say also Jesse from 7 Remake or whatever, things like that. But
any cool panels that you said that you attended there that you liked?
The answer is yes, but nothing really video game related. So I don't want to say it and like go too much of a tangent. There was a panel that was like the crew of One Piece, the English crew. I'm just talking about voice acting there.
Is that the Netflix live action one?
No, sorry,
anime?
the anime. So
okay,
it was like Colleen Clinkenbeard, Eric Vale, all of those. And then this is a very specific one, but it's someone who grew up as a mid-generation millennial. The voice of Fievel from Fievel Goes West did a panel, and
Okay.
yeah, so it's like a very specific thing. But
Uh-huh.
he did that like 17 years ago or however many, or
Yeah.
no, he did it however many 20 plus years ago, 1986, long time ago,
More than
and
17.
yes. He had been doing the role for 17 years, is what it was. He started when he was 5 until he was in the mid 20s, and now he's like 30 something, or early 40s. But yeah, and that was just cool because he had done the voice acting as a child, very young child, like 5 years old. But now he does, like he said, he had like 41 producing credits. Like he works on the other side of the camera now. So it's just cool to see someone like that in terms of like, just because you don't see their name credited in like a voice acting role, an acting role, or whatever, doesn't mean they aren't still involved in the industry in some way. So that was kind of fun as someone who kind of grew up with those movies and things like that. But that's kind of really all I had to say on Fan Expo. It was just kind of fun to see, a lot of people nerding out for different IPs across video games, media. Of course, one of the big things there that is not covered in like, I presume not covered in like PAX and Fan Expo, or sorry, Anime Expo, is like the Western comic front, like people who have, Marvel credits and things like that, DC credits, those sorts of actors and actresses. Also, Lord of the Rings, just general. John Rice Davies was there. He did a big panel, things like that. Not the huge Lord of the Rings fan, but I did, grew up with those movies as well.
Speaking of panels, though, I think beyond Fan Expo, like back to Anime Expo, like I think one of the weird shifts this year compared to prior Anime Expos is like a lot of like the companies, the video game companies that we would expect to hold an Anime Expo panel, like did it like before. For example, Bandai Namco, they had a showcase that was not held at Anime Expo. They just had like a pre-recorded showcase thing and decided to do that instead of like having like a whole panel at Anime Expo, which is like a weird thing because like like for it's they're fun to attend in person because they also usually do giveaways as well
Hmm.
when they're there live. And now it's just like they've kind of just feels like they've kind of pulled out in terms of like having live presence. But you have I'm thinking of like relevant, not relevant, but I mean semi-relevant things to us in terms of like panel presence. You have the Arc System Works panel that heavily featured their collab with Cyberpunk, coming with Lucy as a DLC character. Then you had the Cyberpunk panel that we briefly discussed when they unveiled Edge Runners 2
I'm
there.
sure you guys talked about the Access
Oh yeah.
panel last week, so that was on Friday, I believe. So you would have talked about it, I think,
What was that
or was
Access? Did we talk about Access? I've already
I don't think there was anything at Access that really interested us.
okay.
Mhm.
It was just the Fata Morgana ones that we talked about.
Oh yeah, we talked about that one thing. Yep.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I guess they're technically publishing the port of Cards Battle RPG, which is an RPG, but
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but
Missed that one. But yeah, but other than that, you had the mainstays like you still had the Fate Grand Order at Anime Expo. That's long running. Atlas was there. It's some you know
pretty much
uh
entirely for
Persona 5
P5X.
Tecmo. Yeah. So, but that was the only thing they were focusing on there. But other than that, it's just like it just feels like kind of a almost I
It was
don't
an
know.
odd year. It was an odd year
Yeah.
for panels. Like there was it was a great year for anime panels. It was not a
Yes.
great year for game panels. I saw the Panty and Stocking premiere and that was incredible.
Yeah, I heard a lot of
But
people loved it there.
mhm.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, there was like some crazy like just anime announcements all around.
Yeah, this season
They they
like
they thrive when they thrive.
yeah, it's like this season for anime is crazy. There's something for everyone.
Oh yeah, it's great. I mean, it's usually how it is for like most other seasons, but this one in particular, there's like a lot of like breath of new fresh air that you know, but some long running ones coming back like Panty Stocking, but like some complete ones out of nowhere that like kind of just like threw me for a loop, right? Like obviously there's like high expectation for City the animation, and the first episode blew everyone away in terms of its visuals. The comedy is a hit or miss for some people, but I really like how Nichijou did it, so it hit for me.
Yeah.
But then
It's not a
some of the other
1-to-1 for
ones,
Nichijou.
for
It's
sure.
like it's for lack of a
The-
better word, it's a little bit more medicated because there's like more of a structure to it versus Nichijou, but that's not bad. I still like
Yeah.
it. You still get the same vibes, and clearly, like even with just one episode, it's one of the most beautiful anime I've ever seen. So
Yeah. But there's other great stuff out there like Studio Bind with Ruri Rocks, the Kana Hanazawa show, Detective are crazy. Just there's all sorts of like
yeah,
fucking cool
there's all
shows out
sorts of
there.
stuff. There's even some shows that are really good, but do not watch them unless you're in a good mental state, like Takopi's original scene.
That's what I'm like. I haven't started that yet. I'm like, I don't know when to start because I don't want to watch a depression show right now. And I was like, I told my friend, I was like, maybe I should marathon. He's like, do not fucking marathon it. You're gonna feel so bad if you marathon. I'm like, what?
The
What am I
literal first
marathoning?
frame of that is a content warning about suicidal
Oh my
thoughts.
gosh. So yeah, I do want to watch it, but I kind of don't want to watch something too depressing at the moment. But there's already there's already some shows there that like they started like out okay, but their second episodes were like super depressing. Like there's just like this usual kind of like Clavitas or whatever, and like okay, this dark fantasy show is like seems okay. Then the second episode like super dark and super depressing. Like oh.
That just reminds me of like when like years ago when I was watching Hinamatsuri, and that was like a comedy, like very very like funny show, and then you get to episode 6, and it's like who turned all the waterworks on, dude?
Oh yeah, oh man, I love that show. But yes, it does get pretty emotional
That's a
for
show
sure.
that more people should watch that I feel like really fell under the radar
Oh
because
yeah,
wasn't that like a high dive thing? So
maybe.
yeah.
It was in that weird era. But yeah, like anime is great this season, and the Anime Expo really brought that to the forefront, which is great. But yeah, you got to check out at least some games that you can talk about, and you did recently just put up both an interview with Naoki Yoshida, which is great, and also a preview for Varlet.
Yes.
Go talk about
I'm gonna
go
start.
talk
I'm
about
gonna
it.
I'm gonna talk about Varlet first because I feel
Sure.
like, in a more general sense, that makes more sense to start with.
Yeah.
The Yoshi P stuff was more general, both more general stuff that doesn't even necessarily have to do with games, and also is like way more hyper focused on 14, where I'm the only person on this podcast that can really talk to it. So I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, Varlet. FuRyu is self-publishing their games now. They are they have a Western publishing presence. It's very interesting because what's the best way of saying this? But it's been kind of hard to have any sort of given vibe about FuRyu as a company when their titles have been passed around to basically every single like publisher that handles those sorts of smaller like scale projects in the industry. We've had Axis publish FuRyu stuff. We've had Atlas back before they got big enough where they don't have to license stuff out. We've had Nisa, obviously. We've had Spike Chunsoft. I think Idea Factory's even done one or two. It's like
Xe did one.
yeah, Xe did one. So it's like yeah, so it's like every single company that conceivably could has. And now they won't anymore because they're self-publishing, and it's man, it's just weird because it's like you keep seeing it happen. Like obviously, we've all been around long enough to see when that trend towards Japanese companies opening up Western branches really kind of started kicking off with Idea Factory, like a little more than a decade ago. But it feels like, especially for you having done it, it's like man, the only one that's really left is like Aqua Plus technically, but they're being sold. They could be bought by DMM, which means that it would kind of in a way become that. And
Kind
Falcom.
of yeah. It's been weird because when you think about the legacy and the history of FuRyu, they've been a lot around longer, way longer than people realize. They were around since like 2009, releasing DS stuff in Japan. They've been in the industry for a long time, and even though we only like in the West, we only see maybe the most of the output of FuRyu as through like their console games, like that. Is very hit and miss. We'll say they are pretty much an entertainment giant in Japan. They do way more than just console games and mobile games. They
They
have
also
like
do figures and stuff. Like their
yeah,
booth
figurines.
at Anime Expo wasn't just about Varlet; it was
Yeah.
also about all their other stuff, which makes sense.
They do like
Um,
arcade industry, like heavy in the arcade industry too in Japan with like photo booths and like the arcade prizes and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm. They
They
even
are
had
pretty
like a small arcade machine at the booth too, I believe.
Oh, cool.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it was really interesting because it's like whenever I've interacted with a FuRyu game, it's been through like degrees of separation. It's been through the publishers that have handled them in the West and not
Yeah.
the teams that were like behind the games themselves. Uh, Varlet seems neat. Um, I don't want to be mean, but I feel like everyone in this podcast can agree that when it comes to FuRyu stuff, it's kind of hit or miss. So we'll see how it turns out in the end. I like a couple of FuRyu games. I still say that Lost Dimension was really good. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but that was over a decade ago.
What was that one that came out after Legend of Legacy? The one that came out on like DS or 3DS? It was like a
The Alliance Alive.
Yeah, Alliance Alive. That one.
I know that Adam liked Cry Machina, and I should play that eventually. But yeah, what I got to play is interesting. But again, even in the best of times, like previewing an RPG doesn't really tell you much. So instead,
Right.
I'll tell you about some of the stuff I learned about FuRyu's self-publishing and what that means for
Well,
folks in the
before
West.
that, just a very just basic like rundown. Like what like for people who don't know, like what is Varlet? Like what's like the general system of Varlet? Like for just I just don't want to glance over Varlet because
Yeah,
they are
okay.
making
So,
a game and publishing it.
yeah. So the way that they've described the game is it's a game that kind of is supposed to teach you more about yourself. It's like obviously a turn-based RPG, very clear inspiration from Persona because you have like high school students like getting these superpowers and using them to protect their and that's protect their school more specifically. But there's some interesting stuff there. Like there's a layer of the supernatural stuff this time is like portrayed as like a glitch in the system, like glitch in the matrix with this like mixed reality app that the school like is taking off in the school and how social media and stuff like that, the impacts it can have on impressionable youth, at least from the vibes I got from what I played and also what the synopsis for the game that we've received so far talks about. And I think there's something interesting there. I think I think more so than like what they tried with Monarch, I can see where they're going with this, and I'm more interested in it. And especially since what I saw, it seems like it's got more levity to it, and it's not just like insanely dark all the time. From a gameplay perspective, and this is one thing I did actually mention to them that kind of stood out to me. It's been a while since FuRyu has done a strictly turn-based RPG. They love their light tactical RPGs, like RPGs that have like a light tactical element that doesn't really add too much to it, but it's part of the gameplay. And obviously, they've done action RPGs in the past with stuff like Rey Nodis and like again like Cry Machina to varying degrees of success. But it's been a while since we've had like a pure turn-based RPG from them, and this one is again just turn-based, but it has a turn order system, and it really kind of forces you to consider how like different actions will like take different amounts of time, and how to like okay, what attacks do I want, like what skills do I want to use on which enemy, and how am I going to get to a point where I will move before them. I love battle systems that really make you kind of engage with that. And then, like I said in my preview, even from the little I played, it feels like there's a real flow to it, which is a good sign. Because if even just in a short demo, I can see, oh, this is how they want the battle system to feel, that tells me that they've probably thought it through to a significant degree. And it's like, okay, they clearly have a vision for what they want this game to feel like, and it seems pretty good so far.
Yeah. Okay. I think one of the most interesting things that you mentioned in your preview that they mentioned is like that Gun Parade March was like a big inspiration for this game. I'm like, oh, that's That's really weird, interesting, but I'm like also a little bit, a tiny bit worried in the sense that like I think about like a recent game that was inspired by Gun Parade March. Oh, Loop 8. That's right. So,
Yeah.
I'm not saying this will be like Loop 8, but I'm just like,
It was Loop
I
8
think
also
we're
FuRyu?
I
Forget.
don't know if that's FuRyu. That's a good question. Now I have to go check because what was that? Was no, that was Marvelous.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, but it's cool to see that like the long lasting legacy of Gun Parade March and more modern titles.
Yeah.
Whether they, regardless of like what success or failure they find, um, it's cool to see this. People continue to be inspired by like that really experimental game that was back on like the original PS1. Still
Yeah.
one hell of a game.
Yeah. But yeah, like some of the stuff I talked about, not related to specifically Varlet. Sorry, I keep
Okay,
messing that up.
you're good.
Is the self-publishing stuff. So
Hmm.
obviously, maybe was expected since they're self-publishing. They don't have a retail publishing presence so far. Instead of working with other companies to handle a retail presence, or just it's digital only in the West. Though I did get confirmation that the Japanese physical releases will have English as an option on them. So much like with, say, Fantasy Life, if you want to get a physical copy, you can import it, and it will have English available, so that's good. Yeah, they also did mention that one of the reasons, like, this is day and date on PC, which wasn't the case for FuRyu games in the past, is not just for the international presence of like RPG fans on PC, but also just as a direct result of PC as an audience, even in Japan, now like eclipsing PlayStation for those types of games. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, I saw that like you when you spoke with producer Hideaki Ito about this, like the decision to go simultaneous worldwide release on this was because of his previous work experience at Capcom, which where he worked on Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, and he saw the very, very real tangible benefits of a simultaneous worldwide release with a title like that. And that's why he really pushed for it with Varlet in this case, which is a really
Yep.
interesting, shift of experience. Like you saw firsthand and you're now trying to, kind of make that a policy in the, titles that you're working on other
Yep.
places.
I feel
Which is
like it's
cool.
the right choice. It is a shame that there's no like direct physical release in the West,
For
but
sure.
it's like you got to start somewhere, and if this is where they had to start, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I like it. Like I respect them for trying to do it, and also like, hey, it's like them going back, going like, hey, we're still kind of new at this, so if you want to get a physical copy, rest assured we have at least the other language tracks available in the Japanese copy if you're able to, go out your way to import it. And like different companies will find different solutions. Like Falcom, they partnered with Gung Ho. They didn't do it themselves. They partnered with Gung Ho in releasing that it physically in the West. They could have easily, gone the FuRyu route in this case. It would have been easier on them, and still wouldn't be any less valid.
Yeah. But yeah, interesting stuff. I am actually pretty interested in seeing how this turns out because, like I said, the gameplay seems interesting, the concept seems interesting, and despite like I said, for you having been hit or miss in the past, they have had hits, so this could be really good, and
Yeah.
I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, we never want a game to like release bad or be a bad game when it comes out. I mean, we always hope for the
Yeah.
best for any new release. Mikhail, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think the one thing to keep in mind is whenever you see these smaller publishers in Japan try to self-publish, they usually kind of falter on their marketing and PR, which directly affects how the audience sees the thing. Because if you have a title where you have fans looking at all the Japanese media only, those people are already your audience. The whole point of you won't be able to expand your audience. But I think with this title, at least they've partnered with a pretty good PR company, so you're going to see more promotion and outreach. So you'll probably see more media outlets covering it, which will get more eyes on the game. So while it may not have a retail presence, which is like something which all like FuRyu fans have been used to, pretty good retail releases right through Exceed and NIS America who do good stuff, or at least NIS did good stuff before. You're gonna have now. I just think it's good for them that more people are gonna like cover the game, and we'll see how it works out for them in the long run. But yeah, like day one worldwide release with English in Japan, physical release. I don't think there's much you can complain about. Let's just hope the game turns out well now.
Yeah. And I do want to say it was really, like I said in the article, it was really interesting seeing that they were demoing it on a laptop, and not like a gaming laptop, like a pretty
Average spec.
average spec. It was like an Intel laptop. I don't even know if it was like a dedicated Intel GPU on it. I think it might have
Interesting.
been like one of the mobile like XE like direct GPUs, but it was like a fairly tiny laptop, but it was running the game like a champ. It looked good, and it's like, yeah, I mean that seems pretty good for the PC port and probably the Switch version for that matter. Like it ran well. It
What
looked
engine
well.
was it?
I don't think they've said. I wouldn't
Okay.
be. They've worked a lot with Unity in the past, so it might be a Unity game. But again, I don't know. So the game was already booted up when I sat down to play it, so I wasn't able to see any of the splash screens or anything like that.
I hope it's cool. I mean, like they definitely have like an interesting visual style with it, and I like the character design.
Oh yeah, the
Just hope,
character designs are good.
yeah. Hopefully it turns out well.
Yep. But yeah, for the other thing I put up so far, Yoshi P. Finally got a chance to do a one-on-one interview with him. Obviously, I live posted about the about the panel that he had at Anime Expo, and that had absolutely nothing to do with Final Fantasy. Besides, like one slide showcasing that, yeah, before he was even at Square Enix, he was clearly inspired by Final Fantasy in his youth. But it was really funny how he basically, when he introduced that panel, he was like, okay, so you're stuck in here with my hyperfixations for the next 75 minutes. Paraphrasing, of course, and that's exactly what he did. But yeah, as for what I talked with him about, it was just kind of more general stuff, and then some specific questions about how he feels about the state of 14 without going into any more specific details. But yeah,
I think the big thing from that preview is like, you know, the him and the development team of 14 aren't deaf or blind to like the criticism
yeah,
they've received from 14. They of course know the problems and what their fans what they're not liking about it. But you know, it takes time to implement these fixes in a more organic manner. It's not things don't, you know, change doesn't come overnight.
yeah.
Pretty much.
I do appreciate that he was honest about the fact that, like, and anyone that's disagreed with this, and I've seen some people online that very clearly do not understand how project management works and how.
Yeah.
He said, "Look, I don't think if we doubled the amount of staff, we would necessarily be doubling the amount of content while also keeping up with quality." And he's
That's
right.
100%. Yeah.
It's like diminishing returns, and it's like it if the bottleneck isn't already on management, which we don't know what it is, just to be clear, we don't know what the specific bottlenecks are. They didn't share, and that doesn't really matter for this hypothetical. The point is that if you double the amount of workers, management is probably going to be a bottleneck, which means not much extra work is actually going to get done.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's that phrase, "Too many chefs in the kitchen." You know, it's not about like just having the amount of like doubling the labor means doubling the output, but it's you're all sharing the same kitchen. You know, there's only so much that can be done within that space. You know,
Yeah.
and also you have to have, you know, people at the top making sure that everything is turning out well and nothing is like not there's like nothing buggy or crazy that's like gonna crash the game because of like how many things have been implemented. You know, it's like, oh yes, let's put like 100 fixes instead of 50 fixes, but guess what? Maybe like 3 to 80 of those fixes are causing other problems with some other levers and switches internally that's fucking things up. You know? It's
Yeah.
it's fucked up, man. This type of field and just project management and how project efficiency and flow goes is it's way more demanding than people realize.
Yeah, and I do applaud him for how open he's been about this whole thing. And the fact that some people don't seem to understand that this is actually him being as open as he realistically can be. It's like, guys, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like I appreciate
He's
he's still
outright
like a very
admitting. He's outright admitting that stuff like Fort Tower Blood, which again, most people that even play 14 aren't going to engage with it, but the people that have tried to engage with it, like the criticisms were concentrated, and he very clearly understands what those were, and he agrees that they missed the mark on that. And it's like, you don't usually see like developers just straight up say we fucked up, and he says we fucked up.
like the nice thing about it is like, he's very transparent. Like when when he sees something and it didn't land well, but he's willing to admit, like within the boundaries of his position, like, hey, it didn't sit well with people, and we made mistakes. We're gonna try to do better, and that's all you can. That's the most you can ask for, because what do you realistically expect him to say? Do you want him to say that's it, 14 is over, end of service? Like what do you want this
Yeah,
guy to
it's
say?
like,
It's like,
and
no,
it's
we're
like,
gonna try to do better. What can you do? What can you
and
really?
it's like neither here nor there. I didn't really put
Yeah.
this in the article just because I didn't want. It's I don't know what the best way of putting this is, but I did ask him, like, one of the things, kind of like offhand, and is part of the reason why he said the just because if we somehow like double the amount of staff, we wouldn't necessarily double our output. Is I asked him about how, like, one of the common complaints from the user base is that it felt like from the launch of Dawn Trail until like the 7.2 patches, there wasn't really anything for players to do that wasn't just raids. And he mentioned that it's like, well, part of the problem for that, and this is offhand, wasn't really something I put in there because I didn't want to, I wanted to be focused on the stuff that really mattered and with what I took from the interview. But he outright said, it's like, well, part of the reason why that's the case is that stuff like Occult Crescent, this large scale content, is so all encompassing. It takes up so many resources, and we can't necessarily deliver it earlier than that because they're still working on the expansion up until it launches. And it's like, it's a balancing act. And they only have so many resources, so they make the most of what they can. And it's like, yeah, that's fair. It sucks, but it's fair. It's like, man, it really is. It really does feel like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I wish him and the team all the best, because it's very clear, just speaking with him and from his, like, from the way that he responded, not just in terms of words, but also his body language, is that nobody is more frustrated with when 14 falters than Yoshi P. And I think it would do a lot of good for the community, both the community as a whole's mental health, as well as the teams, if people playing the game can maybe turn down the heat a bit and understand that, no, they do understand, and they're beating themselves up about it as much as you're trying to beat them up about it. You don't need to double down.
Yeah, it's like at the end, constructive criticism is very helpful, and it helps identify problems maybe they weren't able to catch.
Yeah.
But doubling down and like just spending all day being negative and toxic about it is, at the end of the day, you're just making everyone else miserable at no one's expense. For what benefit? For what benefit? So it's like it doesn't help move the needle at all. So like those are like kind of my most favorite types of interviews with developers and producers, and it's just the way that they're able to like show like the human side of things, because games aren't made with magic; they're made with many people in a lot of cases.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a really fascinating and effective interview. That's approachable in a way that, like, even for people who don't play 14, just like it's a nice, good way to like see behind the scenes of a really popular MMO running, and the trials and tribulations that him and his development team faces, even though you're not a player of the game.
Yep.
Did he talk about 16 at all?
No, I didn't really ask about it. Other people did ask about, like, there was an Anime News Network interview that kind of touched on that a bit, that was a bit contentious, but I don't think that they were necessarily invalid for the questions they asked. But I didn't ask him about directly because I was mostly interested on his current work in 14 and how it ties into some of the stuff that he was talking about during his panel.
I
kind
think it's
of bring
really
it up
cool. Oh, go for it.
because like we saw the thing with the investor briefing where you see people like weirdly extrapolate on non-committal statements. Like Square Enix brass said they're going to make the next game be like Clair Obscure because the investor asked, and similar. We kind of talked that down like 2 weeks ago, and I saw similar things where they're like they're proving that the next Final Fantasy 17 is going to be turn-based, and then when you look at like the primary source, you're like, no, they didn't really say much of anything, which is very typical of these sorts of interviews. But people just see what they want to see, or maybe more cynically, they make the headline that they know is going to be get eyeballs on it, and then when you actually look at it, you're like, they didn't really say that. So please,
Like, yeah, I like, Adam has been through this through like many times where like, it is another day that ends with the with DAY, and then the sky is blue, so that must mean that people are mistranslating and misinterpreting some Square Enix investor call and their answers. It always happens with them. It's just like because they release the script later than than when they come out in Japanese, so people use whatever machine translation software that they use to run it through, and then take whatever meaning they can out of what is spat back out at them, and then that is the unholy truth. No matter what. So it's like, okay, no one wins in the process.
Man, I'm so sick of that stuff to the point where I've almost like muted Clair Obscure terms on social, but like I still like the game and I want to talk about it, but it's reaching that point where it's like anytime someone says anything about an interview now, it's like, oh, what did they think about this? And like, whatever, just post a headline like Dawn Trail, the next expansion for Final Fantasy 14 is going to be set in Paris because of Clair Obscure or some bullshit like that. It's like really there.
The one thing I'll say to hopefully end any and all discourse about will the next Final Fantasy be inspired by Clair Obscure? Yes, because Final Fantasy has always been inspired by its peers, and Clair Obscure is popular enough that it's going to inspire it in at least some way. We don't know how, but it's going. That's just how it works.
I agree with our boss Alex Donaldson's take. Is if you're at Gamescom and you ask Yoshida or any of these people about like this or anything other than the topic that they're there to present, you deserve a subatomic wedgie. And I agree.
Yeah. I was gonna comment, James, that I think it's like, and you kind of touch upon this too, but I think it's really cool that Yoshi P and his the crew that he was out was like they just held a panel that's like not really about the state of 14. It's not really about like a game announced during video games in general. It's just like, hey, like growing up, this is what I was into, and this is like these are the things I think about that when I do my work, and these are things that really inspired me. Because I think it's really cool to see like what creatives like
humanize
their life experiences.
It humanizes him. So obviously, it's like you don't really get to hear that side of a lot of like. It feels like for a lot of Japanese creatives in the industry, you don't really see that as much as we probably should. So it's good to get something like that. But yeah.
If anything, the poster boy for that, for what we see like on a daily basis, is like Hideo Kojima, because his socials is always like he's watching a new film or he's listening to something.
I still love that. I forget which actor it was, but I still love that one photo of Kojima and that one actor. I forget who, and like the matching shirts. What was that anime?
Licorice Recoil.
Licorice Recoil, and then like a post like directly after that from either him or Jeff Keighley, basically implying that was Jeff that took that photo.
Yeah, I forget. I know exactly which photo you're talking about. I forget the actor who was in it too, but yeah, I love that photo. Like Kojima, like love him or hate him for what he does. I love his socials.
Like Kojima, no matter what you feel about him, you can instantly tell everything that he loves. He wears it on his sleeve, and I love it about him. Like I've been playing through Death Stranding too, and I found Pecora, and I got her hat, and it makes it so that whenever you do the shout to like kind of like try and call out to people in the world, instead of it just being normal, he just Does
He
all of
says
these
Pekko. Yeah, he's like Pekko.
Pekko.
You know, God, I love it.
It's so good.
Pekko. It's like fucking Norman Reedus saying this. Like, what the hell's going on? It is. It's one hell of the video game for sure. I also love like in the Japanese voice casting for Death Stranding 2. He got one of the main voice actresses from Licorice Rico. I think it was Shion Wakayama. And he's like, yeah, I hired her to voice there because I really like Licorice Rico. Like, fucking Kojima, dude, you glorious
Honestly,
bastard.
we could all learn a lot from being so like sincere with our interests,
Oh yeah.
like Kojima, genuinely.
Yeah. I won't say anything else, but I can't. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I can't wait for you if you haven't already seen it or whatnot. But I can't wait to see find the pizza stuff in Death Stranding 2.
Oh yes. I saw that literally just a few days ago. That
yeah, dude, that game is insane.
game of the year, not even close.
Yeah, that game is insane. But yeah. Thank you for sharing. What you can right now about your Anime Expo trip. Seems like you had a really great time there, and of course, really draining and exhausting time too, as you're still recovering from it until whatever the next event is. But yeah, it's always fascinating, going there and seeing like what the general vibe and culture is, and like what
Yeah.
people are into.
Despite it all, I would say it was good vibes this year. Despite it all.
Yeah. It was kind of weird at first because like before the show opened, there was like a fire alert alarm at like one of the main halls. Yeah. But I'm glad everyone was just seemed to be safe and was seemingly, at least from the outside, to go well.
Was it just someone microwaving popcorn?
No, there was just some friction with a vent for the AC.
Yeah, very glad that it wasn't like a real, delay on events or emergency that could have actually hurt people.
Good on them for like being able to get that cleaned up like in a timely, safe manner too. Like shouts out to the staff on that for getting it all cleared up. Cool.
So we do have James's two features. Naoki Yoshida, we refer to him as Yoshi P, producer of Final Fantasy 14 and producer of Final Fantasy 16, reflects on his past as he looks forward to the future. So that is in a future article by James up on the site, rpgsite.net, as well as the Varlet preview. Title is Varlet isn't just an RPG about self-discovery, it's FuRyu's as well. Of course, FuRyu, we use the term hit or miss, which does include hit as half of that defining statement. So we never want for your games to be mid, even though that's the reputation they've garnered. So maybe Varlet can be something that stands above the rest.
There's a non-0% chance that anything is possible. We could be, we're saying this stuff now, but come end of the year, we might be saying, maybe Varlet is a game of the year contender. You never know.
You never
Pandora's
know.
box.
Yep.
We do have a few other features, but we'll kind of go into our games talk section a little bit abbreviated this week, go into the rest of the features, and then go into news, as we typically do. We've kind of mentioned how July, there's no such thing as a slow month, but it's a slower month. I saw that you guys last week when we weren't here talked about some like DLC add-ons to some previous games like Sea of Stars and what was the other one? Aiden. So I saw that Adam kind of led the discussion on a few of those things that came out relatively recently. So another game that I have mentioned in the past as a game like, man, that looks neat, I should get to it, but then I didn't right away. Just released earlier this year in May. It's a bit of a mouthful. Title of the game is Tainted Grail: Fall of Avalon. So I kind of went into this game completely on a whim, but a little bit on a I know I do this sometimes regards to RPG site. I'm like, man, someone on RPG site should play this because it is an RPG in every sense of the word. But we haven't really covered it, so I should play it as part of my job. So that's kind of the mindset I had going in. But I was genuinely interested. So yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful of a name, but it does have fewer syllables than Claire Obscura Expedition 33. So there you go. No judgment rendered there. It's a first-person RPG. The points of comparison have, and to the community's credit, I feel like these games, no matter what sort of game they were, if it was a first-person fantasy RPG, they would say it's like Skyrim, but regardless of if it had any more than just a passing appearance similarity to Skyrim, I have seen people for Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon compare it to Avowed, and it's actually a pretty apt comparison because it's still a first-person RPG set in a fantasy universe, not an open world, but like multiple zones. Each zone comprises an act of the story. It kind of sets up its progression systems so that there is that interplay between like traditional, battle strength, endurance, and magic spellcasting. But let me back up a bit and tell you what this is. It's Tell me if you stop me if you've heard this before, but it's a grim, dark, edgy reimagining of the Arthurian tales, like the Tale of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round, which I feel like on RPG site we've read that in a couple different press releases from different places. It seems like that seems to be a well that people go to frequently. And I will admit, when this game says it's a dark tale of King Arthur, admittedly, I kind of rolled my eyes. Like that's not why I went into the game. That's not something that inherently I find that interesting. But I will say that candidly, I actually found out that I did kind of enjoy it. I'm not sure it's the best setting, but I kind of had a preconceived notion that I sort of regretted in terms of, oh, this is.
Just
Go
to
ahead.
give some context to what you're saying, in the last like 3 years, we've had King Arthur Legends Rise, King Arthur Knight's Tale, and King Arthur Legion 9, which are all like grimdark King Arthur RPGs.
So yeah, so this game, the setting of this game is that you wake up in it's a it has a third person mode, but I always think of these games as first person RPGs. But it's a game that you can toggle between either. You wake up in like a prison/insane asylum where everyone there is infected with a plague known as the Red Death. The Red Death, at first, it kind of like messes with people's minds, and then eventually they turn into zombies. There's a little bit more detail in the game, but you really don't need to know much more than that, other than that it infects people. But for whatever reason, you still have your mind, your wits about you, even though you've been thrown into an insane asylum. That people effectively go once they're infected with Red Death, they get tortured and die. And you're like, what the fuck? I have no memory. Why am I here? An enigmatic character named Caradoc, which I didn't recognize, but I guess is, if you're familiar with Arthurian tales, like one of the lesser quote unquote knights of the round. So an enigmatic character named Caradoc rescues you, but doesn't really tell you why. Like you don't really know why, like what his motivation is and things like that. And then eventually you get out onto, you take up story events happen, and then you end up on the mainland of Avalon, which is an island, and it's the setting of the game, hence the title Avalon. You learn that King Arthur and his knights and his whole kingdom went to venture away from the homeland like 600 years ago in order to escape the Red Death, and they ended up on the island of Avalon, and they wanted to like effectively conquer it. They don't use that term, but when you read through it, you're kind of like, oh wow, they're just like being a little shits about it as they decided to basically take over this land. Um, but that was 600 years ago. King Arthur is nowhere around, and the island's kind of in shitty, dire states. And this is where I'll talk a little bit about the environments and just kind of like the art and the vibe of this game. Everything about this game is meant to be like over the top, edgy, and bleak, but in a sense, in a way that I actually kind of vibed with it, where there's like skulls and blood and entrails and sinews like everywhere, corpses. It's meant to be very like 3 edgy 5 me, and like the art direction of the enemies kind of vibes with that. The art direction of the armor and gear sets kind of vibes with that. It's meant to be like that's the vibe it's going for, and it succeeds, even though if it might not be my personal taste or your personal taste, but it's definitely like artistically coherent in that sense. You end up, and each act of the game, there's like 3 different regions, 3 different acts. Each act of the game basically elucidates on one thing that King Arthur was trying to do 600 years ago, but somehow he failed because the island clearly is like still hanging on by the edge of a thread. Everyone's under attack by monsters and demons and the plague and things like that. And here's one that's a bit silly on its face, but I'll have to describe it because it's a core premise of the game, is that there is like this enigmatic magical fog on the island, and it's called the Weird, Wyrd, Weird, which they also like enemies affected by the Weird are called weirdlings. The just the general effect of the Weird.
That's how you pronounce it. not word.
Yes, and it's a bit no, it's weird. That's how they pronounce it. Which is it sounds weird, Weird, on its face, because they're like, we got to prevent the weirdness. It just sounds weird when you hear it, like only in audio. Like the weirdness comes out at night and it affects people's minds. It is, but the thing is that it's silly the first couple times, but then I found myself kind of acclimating to it. Like you end up like being immersed. It's a very immersive game. And then at some point, I stopped thinking of like that's a weird thing to call it. It just kind of is what it is. That's what it was called. And it's a sort of game where if you go out at night, the enemies are a lot tougher. People that would normally just be called like vagrants or hunters are now called like entranced weirdling. They're possessed and they're stronger. Um, an armored creature called the Weird Knight will like chase after you, and early on he's basically invincible. So you never want to venture out at night early on. Um, so that's kind of like the premise of the game. Though I am skipping one crucial thing that I actually thought was kind of cool. Though it sounds weird, WEIRD on its face, is that early in the game, story events happen such that the soul of King Arthur like doubly inhabits your body. It is actually a very similar comparison to like Johnny Silverhand in Cyberpunk.
I was just about to say, like, is that Cyberpunk? Yeah.
Yeah, where basically he speaks to you, you speak to him. When you sit down at a campfire, a ghostly like apparition of him appears and kneels by you. It's
Is
implied
he
that you're the
voiced
only
by
one that can
Keanu
see him.
Reeves?
No,
Oh,
I wrote down. I googled his voice actor. It's not a household name, and I don't remember it offhand. But I will say his voice actor is immaculately good. Like I
that's
think
awesome.
the idea of King Arthur is in my player character's body. I don't really care about that. But he's written in an interesting way. He's voice acted super well, and I actually found like, damn, this guy's kind of dope in that way. But the thing is that doesn't have he has memories of like, yeah, me and the knights came to this island 600 years ago to conquer it. We wanted to create a new kingdom for my people. I don't know what happened. Why 600 years later has everything gone to shit? Like, did I fail? What do we have to do? And every single act, basically, you help recover his memories. You help learn, like, bridge the gap between what happened centuries ago and what's happening now. And you kind of learn, and it's hard to just distill it down in a couple minutes of a podcast, but like he's a very intricate character in terms of like he had his people's best wishes at mind, but he relied on unethical means to try to get the best outcome. He did some shit that's kind of unforgivable, but he did it for reasons that you could be argued as good. It's not one of those things where you can just say, is the character good or bad at all, which I found very intricate, where it's like, well, he tried to do the right thing. He did it in the wrong way, but maybe if the outcome was what he planned, you could have been justified for it. Effectively, he partnered with the wizard Merlin to try to win a battle against the locals of Avalon that were being corrupted by the weirdness of the island, were being affected by the Red Death, and the enigmatic gods of the Forerunners. And I know I'm giving a lot of jargon here, and I'm not going to go into everything super detailed, but it's a multifaceted conflict is what I'm trying to get at. It wasn't just we want this land, therefore we're going to conquer it. It was more intricate than that. But I'm not saying it's a defense of what he did. It just means that describing it and critiquing it becomes more difficult, more intricate. And at the end, eventually, you as the player character kind of get the option in a role-playing game to like, whose side do you take? Do you try to end up like correcting the wrongs that Arthur did? Do you just try to finish out what he set out to accomplish? Or do you say, I disagree with everything you've done. I want to just, purge you from my body and you never be resurrected again, sort of thing. Like you end up having those choices based on what you eventually learn happened in the world and whether or not you find that it is agreeable or not. It's truly a role-playing game in that sense. So I guess that's my last couple of comments on the setting, the premise, the environment, the vibe. Gameplay is well worn, kind of standard, but I'm not saying that in a way where I'm really judging it, because it's like how many ways can you design a first person fantasy RPG? You can equip a piece of gear in each hand. You have a heavy attack, you have a light attack, you have a magic meter, you have a stamina meter. One part of the gameplay that I did find pretty interesting and different is that the way that spells work is that you don't have like a spell book or a grimoire or a wand. You equip individual spells like as if they were weapons. Like instead of in your right hand equipping Gladius +1, you equip Fireball. It's not called Fireball, but effectively it's that. And then, just like any other weapon, it has a light attack and a heavy attack, where whether or not you hold the cast or you just instant cast. And this is true for attack spells, healing spells, summoning spells. You equip them as if they were weapons. Each one has a heavy and a light attack, which means you can put like a sword in your right hand and a fireball in your left hand. You can put fireball in your right hand and a shield in your left hand. So the game really allows for, I'm not sure encourages, but allows for truly hybrid builds.
Cool.
Where you might have a spell in one of your hands that causes bleeding, and then you might have a weapon in your other hand, a very standard one, but then you might have a trait that does additional damage to bleeding enemies, or things like that, like very simple synergies that you can come up with and mess with as you go through. So the combat, it's not as intricate as something like Kingdom Come in terms of like positional, sword directional, but I think it works pretty well.
Did you use the spell to turn people into cheese?
No, I did not. You get a it's weird because the most of the game is so like 3 serious, 5 me, super straightforward, edgy, like I've said. But then you have those moments of levity where this guy is like, I've got this ancient arcane spell. You can't teach it to anyone. You can't let it leave. It's a spell to turn people into cheese. And you're like, oh, that's funny. I get it. Ha. So it does have those little moments of levity in that sense. In terms of progression, it's very open-ended. It's you like each act of the game has a series of story quests that you go through, and they eventually lead you from map to map to map. Side quests are kind of interesting in the sense that the side quests themselves are very standard. Like just imagine any RPG side quest, and you're pretty much there. Where you get an objective log, it tells you to go to a place and pick up an item or kill an enemy or collect a thing or craft an item. But one thing that the game does do slightly differently is that new quests are not shown on the map as like an exclamation point or a starburst or anything like that. You just got to talk to people and ask them, can I help you? Or things like that. And then once you do have a request or an objective, then it will show up in your log. So it's a small little change, but it is a change that I think does have some impact in terms of like, however much you decide to go into every building of a town and talk to the bookkeeper, the hospital nurse, whoever is going to determine whether or not you find these quests. And it's one of those sorts of things where every named character will either have a quest or be involved in a quest. So there's nothing that's really like super surprising about it, but there can be some things that are pretty hidden. Where after you complete one quest, you talk to another related character, and even if you've talked to them before, they'll be like, hey, I saw that you did this. I have a follow-up quest for you. And they don't say it so straightforwardly, but it's effectively what it is. So that's pretty standard, but it's very content-rich in that sense, where you're doing a lot of running around. You're doing a lot of, prioritizing multiple objectives at the same time, that sort of thing. I will say that a lot of the quests, and I actually was like, as I played through this game, as I was like, trying to search things or find items, I was going to the Reddit, I was going to the Steam forums, just trying to see what people thought, bounce their opinions off mine. One thing that I saw people critique is that they would say that, and I say they, I'm painting with a broad brush here, but I would read individual opinions in those sorts of places where they would think that certain quests were incomplete because it sounds silly on its face, but it's truly what I read. Because you had to choose one side or the other, that there was no perfect outcome. And I'm like, I love that like stuff. Not everything is just side with A or side with B, or if your sneak skill is high enough, you can make both sides equally happy, and that's the golden path. Like this game has a little bit of that, but there's a lot of quests that you have to make a decision between siding with two opposing forces, neither of which is in the right, neither of which is 100% in the wrong, and you just got to go with it. You could also just refuse to make a decision and run away. Like, I suppose that's an option, but then you don't get rewards for that. One example of this is you meet this mage. I forget his name. I don't have it memorized. Who basically partnered with a druid, and the druids in this universe have like an overarching goal to commune with nature and basically become like ancestral spirits. this mage encouraged this druid to go through this ritual of doing it, but the druid failed and became a dryad. And dryad, that's a very typical like fae creature, represented in a lot of different universes. But it's basically seen as like this curse rather than this like, well, this is what she wanted. So this woman got cursed, and the person, that's not the outcome he wanted. He left. And then eventually he runs into this dryad's daughter, who is like, I need to kill you. You basically cursed my mom for eternity, even though that wasn't his intent. And there's no way to placate both sides. You either got to side with the daughter and kill the druid, or side with the druid and kill the daughter. And you're like, neither of these seems good. I don't know what I want to do. And there's a little bit more context than that. But that's just an idea of like a quest that doesn't have a good outcome, but if you want the rewards, you have to make a decision. And I saw a lot of people criticize that on the forums, and I was sort of like, I'm not sure I agree with that. Sometimes, conflicts can't always be, acquiesced by singing Kumbaya or making sure that your your speech charisma check is high enough to make both sides back down. So that's one thing I did enjoy about the quest writing. Let's see here.
I heard that it's been an early access for quite some time that it went to full release, and like the first half of the game is like relatively more polished than the second half, because the first half was like in the early access period where they had like the time and to really polish that up. I'm wondering, it's been some time since the full 1.0 release of it. Like I believe there's still it's been getting patches to kind of roughen up to ease up the roughened up state of like the second half. Like, did you run into like any like, significant bugs or issues like at the latter half of that game that was like outside of the early access period?
I could not give you a better like TF question if I like gave you a script, because that's perfect. It feels a lot like when Baldur's Gate 3 first released. Act 3 was very similar sense, where it wasn't in the early access period. It was broken. It was like, buggy, broken quest, poorly performing. And that's what this game feels like. And I have two very specific examples where I say this game actually has a lot of promise. It has a lot of interesting things going for it. It has a lot of potential, but it still feels underbaked, unfinished. It still feels like as if I'm playing an early access game. And I have two examples. One, which seems innocuous, but it's more the principle of the thing, is as I was playing through the game in late June, an update was pushed that did a lot of things in terms of like fixing broken quest triggers, things like that. But one of the things it did is that it completely changed the UI for your basic heads-up display for like your health, stamina, and mana. It just completely changed it. And I'm like, I was fine with it before. I was fine with it after the change. But the fact that it changed so radically at all, like a month and a half after release, just gave me the vibe of this is an early access game. It's one of those things that I felt weird critiquing in my review, but it's just one of those things where it's like, that's not something I expected. It's not something on a release game I have a lot of precedent for, just something completely changing as you're playing it. But it's like, nope, I guess this is how it is now. But it definitely didn't help the impression, I suppose.
Closest is like when CD Projekt Red did it for like Witcher 2 and 3, I guess. Like they did have like HUD updates like between release and then sometime after release. But that's like the closest parallel. And I don't know to what extent they did it here, but I assume it's way more prevalent than what CD Projekt Red did with the Witcher game.
Yeah, and then the other one that was a little bit more meaningful, because I agree that the one is like, does that really matter? They changed the HUD to be this style instead of this style. Did that change anything? It's like, not really. But the one thing that did change is that as you go into Act 2 and Act 3, one thing that I noticed is that the number of times and opportunities that you have to have a campfire conversation with Arthur, it's kind of like Melina and Elden Ring, where every time you sit down, like if you've done a story event or done a quest, you can kind of ping ideas off of Arthur, like, what do you remember of this character? Or what do you think about this? In Act 2 and Act 3, he kind of like disappeared. And I thought, like, is this a bug? Did he just like, did I make it so they just don't talk to me anymore? What did I do? But then I found that this was pretty common, and that in early July, I believe it released just a few days ago, like July 6th or something like that, the team at Awaken Realms, I believe is the studio, was like, we're adding 22 new Arthur conversations in the later part of the game. I'm like, oh, so that was a thing. But I've already beaten the game. So like, do I go back now and see what those are? I have no idea of their quality or their meaningfulness, but like, again, it just gives that impression of like, an early access game. And I'm not, it's weird. It's a hard critique to make because I'm not trying to say like games are not allowed to be updated, but it just makes it difficult to like write a review when you're like, all right, I waited a month and a half. I'm going to review this game. Man, the story kind of feels pretty thin in the back half. And then you realize right before you're about to publish your review, oh, we're adding story to the back half. Don't worry about it. And I was like, oh, well, shit.
Well, I mean, I kind of ran into a similar thing with Mandragora in terms of it wasn't more story content, but like I played the game late, like it was well after release, and still like I'm critiquing stuff that eventually is getting fixed, or not fixed, but addressed in some way afterwards. It's a little bit awkward.
Yeah, Mikhail, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so 2 questions for Brian. One, is it playable on Steam Deck? And 2, how's the soundtrack?
The soundtrack is really good. It's I'm not like I can't say like the instrument that they use is this, but they used a lot of like droning Celtic sounding instruments, though I don't have that history to like speak to it as an authority. But it's like a mix of obviously like the Arthurian legend, but plus like Scandinavian, Celtic, Scottish sort of influences, like Northern Europe. And I think as someone who doesn't have the purview to understand that stuff at a deeper level, I still enjoyed it just for at least the flavor of it. So I guess as a normie, as the way I'm phrasing this is that the soundtrack really fit with the vibes of the game, the setting of the game, how bleak it is at times. In terms of Steam Deck, this game didn't for me perform very well on my PC, so I didn't try it on Steam Deck, and I don't know. I admit I imagine not good, but I just don't know. It's a Unity game, so there were issues with like shader caching. With every time like a UI element popped up on the screen, whether it's like you completed a quest or whatever, I would get a little bit of a hitch. Now I will say, despite the patch updates adding story content that I was like already past, it also did, just as I played through the game, my performance did improve over time. So they're working on it. Again, just that early access feel again, where my performance was improving every time they patched the game. And even the most recent patch that I haven't booted up the game since they launched it said that they optimized something on the back end for foliage or something like that. But didn't perform well in terms of that I played it, but it seems like it's improving, every time they update it. So I touched on the story, I touched on like the vibes, I touched on the gameplay. In terms of the whole package, like it is a game that I definitely found myself immersed in. It doesn't have quite as many RPG systems as something like Kingdom Come has, where Kingdom Come has like a whole, like the hunger system, the fact that you can have like a reputation based on how clean your clothes are. Like it's a little bit pared back. There's obviously just your standard health, HP, combat abilities. There are a few stats that you spec into every time you level up that can help you unlock like some dialogue options, but there's really no like, a lot of these are pretty thin, not in a bad way, but just in enough to give you the flavor. Like there is a stealing theft mechanic where if you're crouching and an item is highlighted in red, if someone sees you, they'll put a bounty on you. If they don't, you're fine. But there's no, like, once the item's in your inventory, I think no one else can notice that it's stolen unless you try to sell it to someone. So it's kind of a middle ground between something like Avowed, which is very arcadey, and Kingdom Come, which has a lot of those almost simi elements to it. So in terms of being a full fat RPG, to use what Alex says, I think it does cross the bar, though other games have crossed it a little bit more thoroughly. The story is very immersive. It's one of those games that even as it stands right now, I graded it kind of middle of the scale, but it's one of those games that I still say like, yeah, I recommend playing it. It's one of those things though where I'm just like, I bet you if you play it in a year, it'll be even better. So if you already have too much on your plate, then just play it in a year. And that's the sort of recommendation that I kind of hate to make, because it's like, is it worth playing or not, Brian? It's like, well, I think it is. It's just that I have no idea what it will be. I just have no idea what the timeline pipeline will be in terms of how much are they going to add to the game. Just because they're adding to it doesn't mean it's going to make it necessarily better, though. That's obviously the goal. I think it kind of covers it. I'm glad I played it on a whim. If it's the sort of thing where if you've already played Oblivion and you didn't play the remaster, if you're looking for a first-person RPG and you've already played Avowed, it's something that's different. It's not really tied to a larger IP, though I will say that Tainted Grail I tried to cover it a little bit in my review, is that it was a board game and then a tabletop RPG that was kickstarted. The software project was originally one title, and then it eventually became two: Tainted Grail Conquest and Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. So it's like very quickly kind of become kind of an IP for this Awakened Realms studio. But it seems like this is the first big entry into it. Tainted Grail Conquest is like a deck builder RPG that came out in like 2021. My understanding is that it used to be like a testing ground for the software developers, but then kind of got spun out into its whole full-fledged thing. And then Fall of Avalon is an adaptation of a board game of the same name, Fall of Avalon. So, but all of this is like within like the last 7 years. So it's not like this is, it's not like Dungeons and Dragons where it's got like this huge lore book of eons of stuff behind it. It's relatively contemporary and new, which I think makes it exciting. Though you could say, how new is it if it leans so much on like Arthurian, what's it called, legends that anyone can adapt at this point, because it's so ubiquitous in that sense. But I think it does some interesting things with it. Just because you might be familiar with those tales doesn't mean like, oh, I already know what happens, because it's quite different. It doesn't you gotta be able to like stomach a little bit of jank, a little bit of poor performance, a little bit of lack of polish. If you're looking for something that is super well polished, I would point you to Avowed. If you're looking for something that's maybe a little bit more adventurous in what it's trying to set out to do, I would point you to Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. I'm glad that I went to it on a whim. I do have a review up on the site. And yes, like I did critique it quite a bit, but in the sense where I'm trying to critique the game as it is right now, not the potential it has and where it might be in 6 months, even though the studio's clearly shown that they're supporting it pretty damn well, even just within a couple months after launch, because it launched, I think, in mid-May, and here we are in mid-July, and it's already been updated quite a bit since then. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Nice.
And then I kind of cheekily put this on the on our outline document because Adam mentioned that he had been playing it. Adam, you can talk about this game as little or as much as you wish. You were going into your backlog this week, the last couple of weeks, and you were playing a long lost, forgotten DS game that many of us have not thought about in years. So do you want to tell us a little bit about Blue Dragon Plus?
I can't believe you put this on the document. Okay,
I'm just being
60
cheeky.
seconds.
You can talk.
So I was in between games, and I was looking at my shelf, and I'm looking at my DS games, and I have just a few DS games that have been sitting there for 15 years I've never played. I'm like, Blue Dragon Plus. I played Blue Dragon. I like Blue Dragon. I heard this game is bad. How long is it? I check, and it's like, oh, it's 15 hours long? That's nothing. I can beat that in like 2 days. So why not? I'm just gonna pop this in and load it up and play it. And I don't really remember.
15-hour DS game.
I don't remember much about like Blue Dragon's story. That's not really the reason why I like the original. And I'm like, who are these people? I don't remember any of these characters. Oh, I remember Maro or Tarumaro, I clearly don't remember his name, but I remember he's annoying as hell. But anyways, this game is a RTS light. It's sort of like Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings, only I think it's way more streamlined and simple and easy and kind of brain dead. The story has to do with Nene, who is like the villain of Blue Dragon, falling in love with an android, and also there are robots that are bombs, and that's basically it.
Wait, what?
I mean,
I'm as bad as you thought it would be. I know you're being a little glib, but yeah.
It's pretty bad. I mean, it's luckily short. Yeah, it's just one of those games where like, yep, I played it. That was a decision.
Tell me one good thing about Blue Dragon Plus.
There's a DS remixed version of that Eternity boss theme without the vocals.
Hell yeah. Oh, damn. I said one good thing.
Well, it's like the theme, but from a DS game, so they don't have the vocals. And it's just like, oh yeah, this is that Eternity boss music, only just the DS-ified form of it.
Isn't there a second DS game?
There is a second DS game. I own it. I will eventually play it just for fun.
There you go.
I don't think that one's an RTS though. I actually have no idea.
I mean, there was kind of that era of, you get like your GBA, DS, 3DS spin-off, but
Yeah.
because the original game was like a third person, turn-based or action RPG of some sort, and the DS could do that, especially if you got to the later gens. But a lot of times they needed to like make a spin-off specific to the hardware it was on. So that's how you got something like Revenant Wings. Revenant Wings was hard as shit. I had to cheat to beat that game. I had to pull out my, what's it called? Not your game
Action
chart, but your
replay.
like action replay. Yeah. Because I'm bad at games. That's why.
One thing that was kind of interesting was the credits to this game. I think like the credits were like some sort of weird mix between like the Mistwalker original and the Ignition Entertainment this version, and it was like scenario by Hironobu Sakaguchi. I'm like, oh, okay. Did you write this game or do you just mean Blue Dragon in general? I have no idea. Music by Nubo Umetsu. Like, oh, okay. I don't know if that's specifically for this game or if they're just kind of talking about Blue Dragon broadly, but I wasn't expecting those names in the credits.
I have one small tangent from that is that I know you recently played through the System Shock 2 remaster, and I'm going somewhere with this. It is related, and I'm playing through the System Shock 2 remaster now. I just want to shout out that I think it's hell of a cool that Night Dive includes the whole Looking Glass Studio credits on the remakes. Like,
Yeah.
not every publisher does that, and it's so kind of the same sort of thing there where they brought in the original Blue Dragon credits, like, hey, characters and IP created by these people, and just because they might not have had hands on in this game, it wouldn't exist without their input, prior. So we're gonna put them in the credits. So always a lot of weird political, and I say that with like a lowercase p things with like whether or not people get involved in the credits. It's like one of those things that shouldn't be an issue, but it, for some reason, is occasionally from time to time. So cool to see thorough credits on a game like that. Too bad the game sounds like you thought it was mid and ended up being pretty mid. So here we are. All right, that was it for our Games Talk section. I'll finish off on a few different article shoutouts that we had here. We already talked about James's 2 articles from Anime Expo, the Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon review. We have a lot of features here from Mikhail to talk about. I'll start out here with a review that you put up, maybe just very briefly, because it's a port review in that sense. One of the surprising announcements alongside the Nintendo Switch 2 was the announcement of Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, having an English dub, having new cutscenes, a few other updates. You reviewed it for us up on the site. I have not read your review, so it's one of those things where how much can you say about Yakuza 0 at this point? But I'm curious, like, what sort of tone you found with Yakuza 0. You've played it on several different platforms. You've revisited on Switch 2. What are your thoughts on the Switch 2 version of the Yakuza 0 Director's Cut?
So I was quite conflicted when I was playing it because it was one of those things where do you approach this from the point of view of someone who's going to replay it, or do you approach this from the point of view of like it's releasing on a new platform, so the main audience for this is likely going to be people who have only been playing on Nintendo platforms, or maybe people who only got into the Yakuza series on Switch, like they played Kiwami, or they heard so much about Yakuza 0, so they said this is the one to play. So thinking about it from both points of view, like this is one of those situations where I kind of wish I didn't, like I could have done 2 review scores or like no score at all, but I still did a score in the end. So my point of view is if you've already played the game, nothing over here justifies the added cost. And it's not even the best portable version of the game because it runs way better on Steam Deck. Like it looks way better on Steam Deck. So this is a bizarre technical port. I know they promoted it as 4K 60. It's not 4K 60 or even close docked. I don't know why they said that. Maybe because the cutscenes are like that, but the gameplay is not like that. In fact, I was comparing it, and I'm pretty sure the Xbox One X, not even it's not a series game. It's an old gen game. That version looks better on my monitor. So on a technical standpoint, it's a little disappointing. Like pretty much everything Sega's released on the Switch 2 so far. But as for the game itself, it's like even though the new cutscenes are a little baffling, like some of the retcons are just bizarre. Like one of them doesn't make sense to me. The others, I literally did not even remember those characters existed until like revisiting it now. So I don't know what they're trying to pull with that. I said it in the review that the cutscenes should have been like when you buy a DVD or Blu-ray release for a movie, where you have them as like bonus or cut content and you can watch them later instead of being actually in the game which people play for the first time. So in that sense, I wasn't happy with how it was on a replay. But again, these are like scenes which won't dramatically change how the story is. It's still a fantastic game and my favorite Sega game, period. So it's like if I had to just dumb it down to like just numbers, I'd say it's a 10 out of 10 game brought down to 8 out of 10 because of some baffling decisions from Sega. Oh yeah, and that red light raid online mode is, like, to put it lightly, it's the most dog shit mode I've seen added to a game remaster in like years. So I would not even bother with that.
Yeah, it was
So-
really hard in my preview kind of writing around the fact that from the get-go, I was like, why are they putting so much focus on this at the preview event when it's very clearly a dog shit mode?
Yeah, in fact, I think I remember your preview also. I was just thinking about that when I was doing the review, and it's just, I was also thinking about how is this what we should expect from the series now? Like, are they going to do a Kiwami director's cut where, like, I don't want to
For
spoil
people
stuff,
who
but
don't-
like,
for people who don't know what is this new mode, just for
Okay.
people who aren't tuned in.
So it's a mode where you can pick one of the main cast of playable characters. You can pick some of the NPCs who have never been playable. Like, you can play as Kuze and stuff like that. And you basically just take on like a gauntlet of enemies one after the other in different parts of the city, or like different, like you can be in like, you know, where you fight Kuze for the first time, the boss fight. So you'll have a thing where you and 3 AI controlled or actual people online. Like, it's an online mode where the online is dead already, by the way. So I just kept getting matched with AI, like CPU partners or whatever. And you have to use your brawler combat and just keep defeating like 15 enemies. Then it'll spawn another group. Then it'll spawn a boss after some of this, and it drops healing items and stuff. And once you finish that, you get money which you can use to level up yourself and like just take on more of that. It feels like the worst kind of mode you'd see added to like a PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 single player game, where like a publisher has to justify it as an online mode so that, you know, like you can charge more for it or something. It's actually like, it feels so awful to play. The controls are sluggish. I literally only played it for a few hours because I was doing the review. Otherwise, after the first 15 minutes I put into it, I would never touched it again. So I think it's like actually awful. Again, this is all, you have Yakuza 0, which is like one of my favorite games of all time. This is all just pointless fluff they've added to increase the price. And I was also thinking about how, you know, all the wording they've done around this around this director's cut is probably like a timed exclusive coming to other platforms. I'm struggling to think of how I would even recommend someone who has Yakuza 0 on Steam pay more than $20 for the director's cut. Because the only actual value you're getting here is eFig's translation, which the original just had English localization. It didn't have French, Italian, German, Spanish. The English dub, you know, I know like most people on the podcast will not even try it for a game like this, but I wanted to try it. I do not think it's good enough. It's not as good as the Judgment or Lost Judgment dubs. Sega still does this thing where, you know, shopkeepers and grunts will still talk in Japanese even if you're using the English dub. So it feels like a half-assed dub again. It's just like,
unfortunate.
yeah, so it's just like a lot of the stuff just drags down one of my favorite games of all time. But then if someone's never played it before and they have a Switch 2 and you want to play it handheld, you're getting a fantastic game over here. It's just that all the stuff added for people who've played it before, absolutely not worth it.
I like actually went to YouTube the other day, and one of my favorite cutscenes. First, one of my favorite characters is Kuze. Is it Kuze? It's 2 syllables, right? I believe. And one of the boss fights in that game is he like traps Kiryu in the sewers, and then he like menacingly walks towards you while he's, you know, monologuing, and he's got a crowbar in his hand, and it's like imposing shit, and it leads to one of the best soundtracks of the game. And I was like, what does this sound like in English? I'm just curious. Like, yeah, I probably never played in English, but I'm just curious. And I couldn't find it. Like, no one had uploaded the scene in English. I tried to like look through Let's Plays. I'm not saying it isn't there, but like, I just like, I had a passing thought, like, I wonder what this sounds like in English. Looked for it for like 6 minutes and couldn't find it. I'm like, oh, disappointed. Because that's like the one thing that I would be interested in trying, even though I have all these characters, you know, I think of them through their original voice performance when it didn't have English back when it originally launched. And then, yeah, I had heard just like that the added cutscenes were terrible. And I didn't really know why, but you kind of elucidated that a lot of them are like, they feel like they don't fit in with the story or they directly contradict things that have happened. which means it's hard to discuss here if you don't want to spoil it. But
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, I was just thinking about how, like, are they gonna do a Kiwami director's cut, because there's like a major death over there. Like, is that gonna be retcon now? Is that what we should expect for the series? Because I just don't know what Sega wants to do with the series going forward now, because they're bringing back some characters like in other games, not Yakuza 0, obviously, but I don't know. It just feels like they need to get their head in order with what they want to do with the series, because I always joked about this with friends like years ago, that if they ever remade Yakuza 0, because it's like old, right? It's a 2015 game now. I thought they'd just call it Like a Dragon Origins or Like a Dragon 0, because they're calling everything Like a Dragon now. So why did they keep this as Yakuza 0? Or why not call it Like a Dragon Yakuza 0 or something? I just don't know what they're doing with the series. We'll have to wait and see whatever happens with the potential next mainline game or the next spin-off which they do. But I think maybe at most what we'll get this year is a port of this to like other platforms. And since they don't discount Yakuza 0 on Steam since a while, I think it's going to be like a discounted DLC or an upgrade over there. I just hope they don't delist the original though, but we'll see.
Yeah, I hope they don't do that. But it's kind of weird because in my mind, like, it's kind of weird. But this version of the game just kind of, I don't know. For me, it's like a passing thought. For me, it's like I don't really care about. I really like Yakuza 0, but I just don't really care for what they did in the director's cut. I already played it. I'm never gonna touch this version of the game because I like what I played, and I have very, 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 very little reason to go play the director's cut. Based on everything I've heard about it, for me, I'm a more like just a forward thinking person of like I'm really looking forward to whatever I forgot the full title or the real title, Project Century. I'm looking forward to that and whatever, and the new Virtua Fighter.
I think it's Stranger Than Heaven.
Yes,
Yeah.
and for me, those are the things that like I care about from the RGG studio right now, because those are the things that are new that I haven't played before, and for stuff that I've already played. Like if they were to announce like Kiwami 3, for instance, like sure I'll check it out, but I'm 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 beholden to what I've played before, and those were novel experiences at the time, and I don't really don't really care much for like re-releases. I value new stuff, especially when it's new stuff that's not like from a long series that's been going on for years. Like, hey, Stranger Than Heaven, that's something new and novel that's not necessarily like tied to like
When's Judgment 3?
I don't know. Yeah, you did
Probably
a
never.
lot of legal paperwork with that one.
I know.
I know. I feel you. I feel you. But hopefully, Shuten Heaven's fucking awesome. Like I just don't really care at all for Zero Director's Cut. We've seen the song and dance for like not even just on this series in particular, but like third-party publishers having to justify why they're on that at the launch of a new Nintendo system. You think of like a Batman Arkham.
Batman, I was gonna say like
Yeah.
Armored Edition or whatever it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah,
Not the same game.
I think the next game we're going to talk about, I feel like the way they handled it is probably a lot better.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Yakuza 0, I think most of us here who have played it think that it is a really excellent game, and it's one of the few, if not the only series where I say play it before 1, even though it came out after. Like it is a prequel, but it is set up to be the first. Like it is set up to be a perfect entry point, in my opinion, to the series. And if you're playing on Switch 2, just ignoring the director's stuff that they added, just the game itself as it is and as it was, really fun game. It got me to play the rest of the series. I played it first when it got first released on PC back in like 2017. So definitely a recommendation from most of us here.
Yeah, go for the full artisanal experience. Do PS2 Yakuza and Yakuza 2, and then go. How is it? 3, 4.
Wait, no. Kenzan, it's got to be in there somewhere.
Right, you're right. It's like 3 Kenzan. No, what Kenzan was 4-3, right?
Yeah.
I think
So Kenzan 3, 4, Ishin 5-0.
Where
I
was
think
Black
that's how-
Panther and all? Where was the Panther series? The Kuroyu.
Yeah, the PSP one, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know where that was.
I don't know where that was. Yeah, then you go back to 0 after like 5 or something. Then do Kiwami 1, Kiwami 2, and so forth. Yeah.
This is like when I was playing Trails. and everyone told me you have to play Trails in the Sky SC and Trails third before you play Cold Steel, otherwise it'll be ruined. And if I would have listened to them, I would have never gotten into the Trails series. So yeah.
But
Yeah.
Adam's taking notes because that's how he plays games. He's like, all
That's
right,
right.
it's one, then two. Yeah.
It has to be the English dub of the PS2 Yakuza one, or else you're not getting the full experience. You don't have Mark Hamill as Majima.
I love how he doesn't even remember he did that.
Yeah.
And then very quickly, Mikhail, you also have two other, well, not necessarily very quickly, but you have two other features here, not reviews, but just kind of looking at some other games specifically on the Steam Deck and Switch 2. I'll just introduce both of them. You did, here is how every Fire Emblem game runs on the Switch 2. Of course, a long time running Nintendo franchise. So you did a similar thing for other series. And I do like how your thumbnail here is everything from Fire Emblem 1 when it released in its weird, limited, fear of missing out release on the eShop, and Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes on the Switch 2, which of course famously ran very poorly on the Switch 1. And then you also covered, actually, I'll just let you do that one first. Fire Emblem games on Switch 2. What'd you find out?
So, like, I love the Fire Emblem series. I got into it with Awakening, which I know some people don't like, but I love that game. I love Fire Emblem Fates. I think I've played every single Fire Emblem which has been localized since, liked most of them. On Switch specifically, most of them run pretty bad. Some of them look really bad. Fire Emblem 3 Houses, I think I've played maybe 300 hours of it. I don't even remember. I'll have to check my saves. I love that game. It looks like shit, runs like shit. So when I was looking at what franchises to tackle, when I did Xenoblade, I knew I had to do Fire Emblem next. And then when I started putting this together, I was like, aren't there more Fire Emblem games than just like the main four? Then I added Tokyo Mirage Sessions. And I forgot to put that in my photo for the article because it's in the box which has my Wii U limited edition. So yeah, that's why I forgot that. And then I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, aren't there some Fire Emblem games on NSO, like Nintendo Switch Online, which are only in Japanese? And she gave me a whole list of what's available on what app and all that stuff. So that was very useful to me. So I downloaded all the Nintendo Switch Online apps with this and I started taking notes, started playing. Obviously, like, read the article on rpgsite.net, but the main takeaway is Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes is the biggest winner of all the backward compatible testing, because a game which used to run at maybe around 30 to 35 frames per second on Switch 1 with poor load times and whatever is now like almost lock 60 FPS perfectly, even in split screen, whatever I tested. So this runs fantastic, feels great to play. And I love that game anyway because I like 3 houses. So 3 hopes. I didn't go for 100% completion. I just did the main game when I was playing it initially, and now I'm downloaded it and I'm playing it on Switch too. Besides that, the other Fire Emblem games, not much else to say. Like three houses feels better. It still has like the bad draw distance and no anti-aliasing and lower resolution and stuff, but it feels better to play, loads faster. Engage was the most polished of the lot, so it's just more stable now with faster load times. As for the Nintendo Switch Online stuff, they all just load instantly except for the 7 seconds to boot up the Nintendo Switch Online app. And this just reminded me that Tokyo Mirage Sessions got such a subpar conversion for Switch, where it was like 720p docked on Switch 1, so that looks like kind of bad, or even worse now if you play it on a 1440 or 4K display on Switch 2. So, and as with my other features, I just posted about some thoughts on what I'd like to see in upgrades. And I think for Fire Emblem 3 Houses, they just need to do like a definitive edition, like just get it running at 60 FPS, get it running at a higher resolution, do some anti-aliasing and stuff. Like, just that game needs to feel better to play. Like, every time I think of how these games felt laggy on Switch, it just reminds me of what Adam said when he was talking about Tales of Grace's F. Everything feels so snappy and it loads fast. I want that to happen for every Fire Emblem game on Switch too. Like, I will pay for that. So that's basically the main takeaway for the Fire Emblem series on Switch 2. I don't know what franchise I'm going to tackle next. I have a list of ones which I'm working on, but yeah, I think the main ones which have less than 10 entries are covered now. So yeah, that's Fire Emblem.
I guess the biggest winner here is the Fire Emblem Warrior 3 Hopes because of the uncapped frame rate that the Switch 2 can take full advantage
Yeah,
of.
just
too.
brute forces to 60. It feels so much better. It still looks like it looks rough, but it's like a transformative experience on Switch 2. So like if anyone...
It feels fun to play. It feels better to play. You know, that's the most important part.
Yeah.
In some respects. Yeah. But like I've been thinking about this, like, you know, ever since, like, you know, Switch 2 came out, you know, several weeks ago now. But like it just feels like it's been kind of silent in terms of like just messaging of like, hey, are there going to be any other enhancements for stuff? And I would have hoped that like Nintendo's first party had like just had a better comms chain and communication of like, you know, just announcing like more timely upgrades to some of their older back catalog, but maybe just didn't have their chips in order for that to make it happen. Oddly uncharacteristic of Nintendo in some respects. But it's just like I would have hoped that like they would have been better on the messaging, more timely at least, after following the Switch 2's launch.
And then not directly related to the Switch 2, but you did cover in a similar way, instead of every game of a series, how it runs on the Switch 2, you looked at a specific game in a series and tried to figure out the best version. This has been a game that's been in the dialogue for the last couple months due to its running up on its 25th anniversary. And that is Final Fantasy IX. So you put out an article, what is the best version of Final Fantasy IX in 2025? Because I'm trying to think of how to do this. There has not been any announcement of a remake or a remaster, despite leaks, despite scuttlebutt, despite everything. Nothing on that front. So you took the game as it exists, since it's existed since the year 2000, 1999, whenever it came out. And you said, if I wanted to play this game in 2025, what are the versions available to me? And then you can take it from there.
Okay, so when I initially pitched this, I thought, you know, like I've done so many of these articles covering multiple games together. I thought this is going to be one game. It'll be a nice and easy, short article. Nope, I think this was longer than some of the full franchise things because there was so much to talk to with the different platforms. Because if anyone's like, for those unaware, when Square Enix does Final Fantasy or like most ports which have staggered releases, the first version sometimes does not get all the updates which come to the future versions when it comes to fixes, when it comes to quality of life features. Sometimes they patch those in later. What happened with Final Fantasy IX is it had a PlayStation 1 version, obviously, that is playable on PS3 and PSP and PS Vita now if you bought it. I think you can still buy it because I bought Patapon day before yesterday on PSN for PS Vita to compare with the new one. But yeah, so Final Fantasy IX had that. It then got a random remaster which was on iOS and Android and eventually on PC in a specific year. I've put a timeline in the article. I can't remember offhand the years. That version was then released on PS4. And what happened over there is the PC version was from when Square Enix was still not doing, like, I'd say I don't know if they still treat PC seriously enough. They should treat more seriously as a platform. But what happened back then is you had all these weird launchers for their ports. Like Final Fantasy 13 had this launcher. These felt really bizarre, like late 90s, early 2000 type PC ports. And Final Fantasy IX's PC port was based on the mobile version. So what that means is you had a very big UI for the battles, touch targets. Obviously for a touchscreen, you have like big buttons. And that carried over to the PC version, even though you play with a mouse or a controller. That got fixed eventually. But what happened is it got ported to PlayStation 4, which had a better UI optimized for controllers and stuff. And then randomly a few years later, it got ported to Switch and Xbox One. And now with the game on every platform, I didn't own every platform, by the way. I picked up one of them just to be thorough with my article. And then I found out like what's the best version of Final Fantasy IX, and in the end it's the PC version but modded with that Moguri mod, which is very easy to install. It dramatically improves how responsive the game is, how fast it loads, the visuals of the backgrounds. You can also like tweak the FMV movies because this was like from a time when FMV movies, there were like tons of those higher quality, higher frame rates over there. You can add more quality of life stuff because the game, the remaster now has cheats where you can max out level, max out a lot of stuff, or you can like use high speed mode and things. But the main takeaway is if you want the pure, quote unquote, pure experience, you play the original PlayStation version on like PS Vita or PSP, because that has faster load times than PS1, and it like has nothing touched, so you have like the pure experience. If you want the remaster with all the quality of life, it's the Moguri mod. If you want to play on console, my only thing is do not play the Nintendo Switch version. It has the worst load times. In fact, I think it loads slower than the PS1 version. Like it loads nearly double as slow as the Vita version, which is kind of insane. But yeah, like I would absolutely not play the Switch version, even on Switch 2. Like I tested it on backward compatibility. It's just a miserable experience with 720p output. Like at least the PS4 and Xbox One versions are like crisp on my 1440 monitor, but the Switch version is just awful. And that's the only version available physically for the remaster. So GG Square Enix. But yeah, for the anniversary, Alex put up a big like his article because he's done ones for the 15th and 20th anniversary, and I wanted to do something, so I thought this would be a good thing. And I somehow fit more devices than I've managed before on my coffee table in that photo, which was pretty funny. So yeah, that's my main takeaway with FF9. Play it with the Moguri mod on PC, runs perfectly on Steam Deck or on whatever PC platform you play on, or play the PS1 version if you want the, like on the other end of the spectrum, the pure experience.
Just get
Now,
the,
can you? I was going to ask, how hard is it to install? Because when you say like PC with mods is the best way, I'm trying to think of someone who's like, that sounds, like something I don't want to deal with. Like, I remember even myself, I think of myself as pretty PC savvy, but I tried doing like Final Fantasy VII with like the Seventh Heaven stuff, and I ended up finding it like not worth it. They do like a lot of weird substitutions, a lot of weird things that kind of, I think, corrupt the vibe of the original game. When you get to Moguri mod, how I know you said it's easy, but is it like an exe file that you just click and it just does it for you? Is it drag and drop? Like if I was interested in getting Final Fantasy IX from Steam and installing this mod, how straightforward is it?
So the funny thing is it was a little difficult before, but they've made it quite a bit easier. So you have to download a specific file, transfer it, like you said, replace the exe or whatever. And the weird thing is they've actually made it easier to do on Steam Deck than it is on Windows somehow. I don't know how they managed doing that, but I believe one of the developers worked on, it's just a command line thing you can put on Steam Deck. Like you boot up the console, and I've put up instructions over there, but you just get that and it'll download it in the background, and that's it. You boot up the game on Steam and you have the Moguri mod launcher. For Windows, it's just slightly more involved. It's just like it's an extra step because you have to replace a file. I've put the instructions there, but I'm with you. Like I'm absolutely lazy with all these things. I do not like doing this stuff. When I was doing the Pixel Remaster mod, I got annoyed with that because I just like Square Enix just fixed this. But in the end, it was just a few files I had to copy over, so it is fine. The only thing to keep in mind with the launcher is when you boot up the launcher, it gives you this big menu which has like a ton of options you can select, you can download. Like how if you've played modded Doom or you've used Doom wards or wards, how you pronounce that, you just get access to so many things. Do you need all of them? What should you download and stuff? It's a little overwhelming. So I've put instructions over there that you just need to install this thing and download one of two options. One of them is what they call the 2020 version, which feels like it's closer to the original, but it's still better looking. And the other one is the 2024 version, which has more AI upscaling, which cleans it up better. But some purists might not be happy with that. So there are like two options now. One is 2020, which is closer to the original, and one is 2024, which cleans up well. So maybe it's good for those who don't care about the original, but just want a pleasing experience with Final Fantasy IX. But yeah, it's very simple. As someone who hates doing these things, it was very simple for me to do it as well. So I would not worry about that. The only thing is just make sure you're downloading the correct mod in the launcher. Because when you hit play in Final Fantasy IX on PC after you've modded it, it brings up this thing called the Memoria launcher, not the Final Fantasy IX launcher. And this will let you choose what pixel font you want, whether you want the PlayStation font, whether you want different sound effects, whether you can even replace Tetramaster with Triple Triad or something like that. People were doing. It's pretty crazy. So they've done a lot to this game, and I would say stop like to people who are still waiting for the remake and all, just like play this if you really want to play Final Fantasy IX now. So maybe the remake is being retooled because of Claire Obscure. Who knows? But yeah.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Obviously, sarcasm.
Yeah. Yeah, sarcasm.
One small piece of news. Just Square Enix did release the Final Fantasy IX 25th anniversary special movie. It's just a celebratory movie of the anniversary. That's it. Of iconic moments from the game in a montage trailer. So one of those things where anniversaries should be allowed just to be anniversaries. Not every anniversary is a sign that something's going to be announced, even though I know this one was kind of convoluted by the fact that it showed up in that NVIDIA leak so long ago. But very playable on all the modern consoles and on PC. And if you're up to it, they've got the whole modding community has done some pretty elegant stuff with the game. And I know a lot of people who are usually adverse to modding have had good things to say about the McCurry mod. So it's something I'm actually pretty interested in potentially playing this year. It's been like 15 years since I've played it, so just to revisit the game in a modern context and see if it still holds up.
Embrace the novel experience, original PS1, get out a CRT, just get out your memory card, fucking go.
Move back into your parents' house.
That's right.
Go to the base, right?
Yeah.
But no, thank you for covering those, Mikhail. I think that covers all of your features. And we did have one other key feature up on the site for this year, also a 25th anniversary. This is from Paul Shkreli. Not able to make it on the podcast. He was having a health issue, but luckily he's getting that all taken care of. But Paul went up and put a feature on the site for the 25th anniversary of Persona 2. As I'm not it says as the complete Persona 2 package turns 25. So I guess this must be when Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment were both available. I'm not exactly sure of the timeline there, but he's counting it as the 25th anniversary and talking about, obviously we've seen Persona 3 get remastered, remaked. Persona 4, of course, just recently had its teaser about its upcoming remake. Just kind of an op-ed about don't forget about Persona 1 and 2. They're kind of stuck away on the PSP at this point.
Well, that's actually a complicating factor. There are fan translations, but the official English release of these games is awkward because if you want to play just like the official English versions, you play the PSP version of Innocent Sin, and then you play the PS1 version of Eternal Punishment. So it's strange because there's just slight differences in those versions. There are fan translations, so you can do both PSPs or whatever. But it's just the official releases are just kind of awkward because we never got the original version of Original Sin, and we never got the PSP version of Eternal Punishment. So you kind of have to do this switch between versions. It's never been good. It's just always been weird.
Yeah, we've had like inverse situations because that PS1 Innocent Sin never got localized. PS1 Eternal Punishment did get localized. Then PSP Innocent Sin did get localized. PSP Eternal Punishment never got localized officially. So it's like an inverse situation that Atlas ran into both times. So it's kind of like a cursed fucking duology of games that are both fantastic in their own ways. As if I want like a full-on remake like Persona 3 Reload, based on how Persona 3 Reload was handled, I personally disagree about doing a remake in that aspect. I would just would want more straight up older ports with slight tweaks and quality of life enhancements in terms of like how GOG does it for their stuff, where it's like original visuals, just make sure it runs on modern platforms. It's like one of those things. It's like what I want is definitely not in the taste of what the modern audience wants in that respect. Because I view Persona 2, both of those games, in pretty high regards, in the PS1 originals, to the point that for example, the PSP remakes or re-releases of Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment are in my mind still not ideal, but are better because they still kind of have the quote unquote stink of the PSP remake of Persona 1, which changed a lot of that game in terms of atmosphere and tone, and tried to make its OST more in line with how the Persona 3 and on soundtrack were, which really doesn't fit in line with how Persona 1 was in my mind. Which they did sort of semi-rectify in the PSP re-release. So Persona 2, Innocence and Eternal Punishment. It's still not ideal for, in my opinion. So I would just rather have the PS1 versions of those games, just a straight up ports with that run on modern systems. But I understand why people don't want that. But I just don't want what they did to Persona 3 Reload with these. I'm just like, if you're gonna remake them, don't like, for instance, like Paul's like, why not just add in social links? I'm like, I get why people would want that. I personally strongly disagree with like adding social links to Persona
I
3.
thought Paul said he didn't want social links.
Oh, I read he wanted social links because he says, and there's like uh okay,
I
no,
don't
no compelling
believe there
argument
is a
for why.
compelling
Okay,
argument to
sorry.
why social links should need to be
Links,
shoehorned in.
Sorry,
So-
yeah, okay. Then
He wants a remake. He does want a remake, but he's saying, but don't add social links.
Yeah, okay.
But
Yeah, so-
unfortunately, we're in a realm where if it didn't have those, what would the market
I
yet
would
do?
I would be I would still play it begrudgingly because I would be interested, but I would be very much way less interested if they announced remakes for these and it's like we're adding stuff from the modern soul like Persona. It's like if they add a calendar system, for example, these it's like what the fuck are we doing? You know, like
Yeah.
it'd be really really annoying for me.
This is kind of similar to like I remember when the Suikoden remasters came out. Some of the more negative reviews were like, "This should have just been a remake," and I'm just like, "No, just leave it how it
No.
is." I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
touch it up, in places where it's sensible, but it didn't need a remake. Just let games be from the era that they were made broadly.
Yep, that'd be awesome. Of course, it also gets kind of muddied up with Persona 2 in particular because one of the final bosses in those games is Hitler, so it gets muddied up. But how do you release that in this landscape, and how do you
Yeah.
like they tried to do that with the PSU, like trying to put sunglasses on him. It's like it's you know it may look like him, but we're gonna call him Führer and put sunglasses on this mysterious individual. Okay, okay. So it gets complicated, I guess.
But yeah, Paul has that feature up on the site. Title is As the complete Persona 2 package turns 25, it's time for a remake. So Paul definitely is in the remake camp, though has some criteria about specifically what he does and doesn't want to see. And as you've heard from us here, like a remake would be okay, just making the game as it exists, touched up and available on a modern platform, whether that's Switch 2, PC, or whatever. I think, any love towards Persona 1 and 2, I think in most cases, depending on the specifics, we'd love to see. That covers us for features. So on to news. We covered a little bit of news kind of as we are going through the features, the things that were at Anime Expo. We talked about the Final Fantasy IX 25th anniversary, but there's a few things here as we go through. In terms of big headline announcements, not really that time of the year for that sort of thing, but this is probably the closest. This is one of those things that I don't know if we had an inclination for, but it's a sort of headline that is not surprising. This is a Switch 2 announcement for a trilogy port of Atelier Ryza, just 1, 2, and 3.
It's a bit more than
trilogy.
that.
Yeah, I was going to get to it. Sorry. Trilogy Deluxe pack announced for Switch 2, as well as PS5, Switch 1, PS4, and Steam. So the big thing here is Switch 2 port, but also like Ryza 1 on PS5. First time for that. I'm not sure about like Ryza 3. I think it was already on all these things, but this is a trilogy pack. Was
Ryza
there something
3
else
was
that I missed on it?
Yeah. So they've confirmed that there's going to be new content so obviously it's going
really?
to come with
Okay.
all the DLC. I believe
Mhm.
so.
Yeah,
But it's also going to come with new content. And we actually get a little hint of that. Like one of the things that we see from a general spoiler doesn't talk about the story itself, but over the course of the trilogy, Ryza becomes a bit of a teacher. In fact, into her whole thing is she's basically as essentially a dissertation or whatnot. She is like doing anthropology and archaeology. It's weird stuff, but we're actually seeing a little bit of that being showcased, where there's literally a scene of her in a classroom as a teacher teaching kids. And that was not a thing that was in any of the games. And that's new content, which is neat because it's like, I actually thought that was one of the more interesting aspects of Ryza. It's like, you see her entire growth as a character, and like seeing some more like sides of that, I think is something I'm definitely interested in revisiting if there's save transfer. If there's not save transfer, I don't know.
They even explicitly say there are new playable characters.
Yeah, and it's like the new story hours. It's like it's for each of the 3 titles too, so it's not even just like we can find a single title.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in checking this out. I hope the Switch. Well, no, I'm pretty sure the Switch 2 versions will be good because the Switch versions of 1 and 2, especially 2, are actually really good. I don't know how 3 was on Switch. Mikhail would be better suited probably to talk about that, I assume. But
I don't know what the landscape is like here, James. In terms of like, I know that they released a patch for Ryza 3 to implement a better English script, like a better editing pass on the English script. Do you think with this new deluxe release, do you think they'll give it another editing pass, or is it already at a decent enough state?
I have not revisited it, so
Okay.
if nothing else, I do want to revisit 3 in this way just to see if the translation is in a better spot.
Okay.
I'm willing to believe that it is, just based off the fact that from what I played of Yumiya, that was like a much better translation. So I think that if there are still issues, I would not be shocked if they do an extra editing pass, just because they're already going to have to do some of that for the new content. So it's like, okay, might as well give it like one more once over. Obviously, we don't know for sure, but I feel like considering well, like I said at the time, the fact that they even invited me specifically to do the preview event for Yumiya after that whole thing with Ryza 3 tells me that they are acting in good faith, and I'm not really worried about the translations going forward. And I think that's a fair assessment to come to.
I was going to say this is announced for this year. No window, just this year. So it's probably a early winter, late fall release. And it's, I guess I had failed to look into the devil in the details on these, because we had seen trilogy packs for the Atelier series before, because that's kind of the cadence that the series has
and this
had.
isn't even new, because for the Mysterious trilogy they added quite a bit of new content.
Oh, really?
I
So this kind of is in their wheelhouse. Yeah. This is what you get when I have not played any of these games. But so like, oh yeah, another Atelier trilogy pack. We've seen these before. But yep, specifically for Ryza, of course, the first time that the same character has been in the protagonist role across their whole trilogy, the Secret Trilogy in this case, coming to Switch 2, coming to PS5 if it wasn't already there. And then, of course, I had missed it. Thanks for clarifying all the new content and new playable characters. So pretty thorough re-release for these games later this year. And I kind of put this in, not as big of an announcement, but it's the same series, so I'll talk about it at this point. The upcoming release later this year in September, just a couple months away, Atelier Resleriana, The Red Alchemist, and The White Guardian. We've kind of been covering that game as it's been going through its marketing cycle over the last few months, talking about how it does tie into the other Atelier Resleriana game that released late last year. But also it will have additional series characters into it. So it does kind of have a little bit of that crossover vibe. Specifically here, the ones that are called out recently are Ryza and Logi, I believe is how you pronounce it. As well as other character.
I wanted to back up just a little bit. On the Japanese website, it does say that on August 4th, they're going to have a broadcast, which is going to announce the release date for the trilogy pack for Ryza. So
okay,
we will know when they're releasing in a little under a month.
I just also want to clarify that Mikhail put that in the news post also. Like, Mikhail did his job.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mikhail.
I just clicked the link to double check from the yeah.
Oh, I see it there. Yep, on August 4th. And then for the Atelier Resleriana, Alchemist, and the White Guardian, like I recognize these characters, the names from other titles, Logi, Aisha, of course, Ryza, all going to have a presence in that game. That was the news for on that front.
Yeah, I mean it's like these are characters that appeared obviously in the mobile game as well, like as characters that you
Mhm.
can obviously roll for when they were implemented into that game. It was always a question of like, okay, besides like the your party members that are coming from other Atelier games and in Monachemia, was it Monachemia or whatever? Um, but like if there were gonna be any other like Gust universe characters like appearing in this game, and it's like, yeah, they're gonna just be a whole lot more that show up as like NPCs. They already, like in the last release, they showed off like the main cast of Resleriana, the original characters, and some of their villains are gonna show up. So this seems to have, like be way more intertwined with that game than I guess I would have thought. So it really makes me think of like, okay, like hopefully you don't need to know too much knowledge, or at least to catch players up to speed on like what's going on in the mobile game, because there are story events happening as like the events of this game are happening as well in universe. So like, how do you kind of bridge that gap and not make total newcomers to the Resleriana world not totally lost?
You know what this reminds me of?
What's
This
up?
is maybe a little bit of a deep cut. Summon
Uh-huh.
Night 6.
Okay.
Summon Night
That is a deep
6.
cut.
Yeah,
Summon
that's
Night
right.
6
Yeah, okay.
has its own story, like, but and its own characters, but it also has like all of the other characters from all the other universes are there also, and a lot of those
Yeah.
games were never like localized. So I played that game and I'm like, oh, these characters all know each other and kind of look similar. I assume these are all from 3 or something. I don't know, but they're all there.
Yeah. They also released like a system trailer for Red Alchemist and White Guardian that shows off more of the game, and like it looks like the whole shop management town restoration of that game is how you advance the main story of the game. I was like, oh, I had no idea that like you're kind of you are, for better or worse, forced to engage with the system, like the shop management to restore the town, to gather funds and restore the town through managing a shop, because in that way that's the way you progress the main story in some aspects. I was like, that's interesting. So I'm curious, very curious. The shop management looks kind of insane in that game, because there's like a whole shop trends bar for different like goods in that game as well. I'm like, oh man, this might be a sickos game. I can feel my brain. It's starting to tickle a little part of my brain that's like, don't do this to me. It's kind of dangerous. Are you trying to make me like more into this game?
Mikhail, did you have any other comments on either Atelier Ryza Trilogy Pack or Atelier Resleriana, the new information?
Yeah, so for the Ryza thing, the previous trilogies which they did, the DX versions, the saves weren't compatible. So I don't think it'll be compatible with this one. So it's going to be starting from scratch, which is not ideal, especially for James and myself. I don't know if the others have played these games on the podcast.
I played a little bit of the first one. I just kind of didn't get into it. The last one I kind of like was I liked was the Tori, because that had the whole timed system, and ever since they kind of drifted away from the timed part of the games, I kind of been like, like it's okay. I understand why, but I thought the whole time limitation of the games was kind of one of the most interesting parts of it.
Yeah.
And besides that, so saves likely won't work. I think the weird thing is the physical release. So it's a digital release in the West. The physical release in Japan will have English only on PS5 and PS4, not on Nintendo Switch. And I believe either the Nintendo Switch 2, I forgot if it's a keycard or if it's just not, it's digital only on Switch 2. It's one of those. So this is a little bizarre because for the prior trilogies, they've only had English in Asia on Switch, and now you have English in Japan also. But sorry, English only in Japan and on PS5. So it remains to be seen if they'll do a Asia Switch or Switch 2 physical with English.
I doubt it,
And the last,
considering
yeah,
considering it. Yeah.
the key card, the size, even I don't think it's going to be a thing. It's pretty disappointing on that front. But like you mentioned, the Ryza 3 on Switch was kind of bad. It was kind of like Yumiya, where it is well optimized for the hardware, but it's drastically cut back compared to everything else. I'm curious if they actually improve that with the DX version, and whether they fix the PS5 version of Ryza 2, because Ryza 2 was the Gust's first PS5 version, and it was kind of shit because they just uncapped the frame rate and turned one or two settings up with slightly higher resolution, and that's it. So if you played the game on a 4K display, it was really, really bad. And if you played it on a 1080p screen, it hit 60 FPS more often or something like that. It was bizarre because Ryza 3 was really good on PS5. So, going to be interesting to try these. I hope the Switch 2 versions are good. I'll probably test all of this stuff depending on when it releases. Knowing Koei Tecmo is probably going to be like September, October hell period. But I'll tackle that when it comes. Oh yeah, and one last thing. I think what I expect with the price point is what they've done for the past releases is they do a bundle for either $90 or $100 or euros, and they sell the 3 games separately for like 40 each. So if you're buying it, it makes more sense to buy the bundle on a discount or the bundle together than buying this. But as of now, they've not announced anything for the price. So even doing $40 with all the DLC will be a massively good deal compared to just like I think right now if you want either of the games with the DLC, it's well over 100. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think the main reason I'm probably going to pick this up, and depending on despite what I say, I'll probably just pick up the trilogy on Switch 2 because I feel like they got to be decent versions of them, especially for like Ryza 1 and 2. And I never got any of the DLC, so I would be, I guess, interested in checking some of that stuff out in addition to the new stuff. And realistically, the main reason why would be not the hugest fan of Ryza 1 and 3, but I like Ryza 2. And I want to see what changes they might have made to 3. So it's like, well, I might as well get all 3 of them.
Mm-hmm. The other news that I have here, kind of as an announcement relative to the other pieces of news, is that back in March, we had kind of a teaser that there was a game production commencing for a game in the Tougen Anki IP. Now, this is not an IP I'm familiar with. Josh, as far as I know, it's an anime IP, but I'm not 100% sure.
I don't know anything
Did you
about Tougen Anki either. I know it's a manga series. I mean, I
Oh,
don't
it's
know.
manga.
Yeah, but I'm not exactly sure what it is exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that, but
Yeah.
it was like maybe, like I don't know if this was one of those unsung things or something that had a cult
No.
following. But the publisher Com2US, I don't know how you pronounce that. It's COM2, the number 2 US, Com2US, announced that they were making an RPG with this IP. They revealed this week that it has a title. It's Tougen Anki Crimson Inferno. They kind of gave us like an announcement trailer. It's a very short trailer, just kind of more of a follow-up teaser, basically saying that they're going to be at Tokyo Game Show, which is, a few months out this year, with a full showcase for this new Tougen Anki Crimson Inferno coming out, new RPG coming out for PC and mobile. But don't know how much more we can spend on this if we don't have a familiarity with the IP specifically. But it's getting an RPG adaptation, and that we'll learn more about at Tokyo Game Show. Going into updates of existing games, I know that, or I believe I looked at and saw that last week, and I wasn't here. You covered some follow up about Persona 5: The Phantom X. Kite put together a kind of a follow up article this week about discrepancies or alignment between the original version with East Asia and then the new global version, which is Japanese and Western. And I saw something in our RPG site Discord about this. Can you kind of give us the tea on what the status is of the game having different clients at kind of staggered parts of the release cycle? Some things people have agreed with, many things they haven't. I'm just like, I'm not the person to speak to this in terms of where Persona 5, the Phantom X currently sits.
So basically, in the mobile game space, sometimes there'll be releases that are staggered, as you said, where it comes out for one region, then like maybe half a year to a year later, it comes out in another region, maybe even several years later, and so on. And sometimes when the much later release in the West comes out, there's usually this concept of like whether this game will try to catch up to where its older servers are or not. Like for example, Fate Grand Order is about like 2 years behind the Japanese server, and it has maintained that it has no aspirations of trying to catch up and be like to be any closer to when content comes out of the Japanese release. They like this 2-year gap, and they haven't tried to like do significant acceleration to catch up to it, because that has a lot of like implications. One, it would mess up with the workflow because they have to localize massive scripts. It's a very text heavy game. So it would disrupt that pipeline that they already put themselves in. And one of the more gameplay centric reasons in this space is that if you're trying to accelerate to um, to older servers at where they're at, that means that it'll go through character banners and main stories and events. Much that stuff will come much faster, and that will give less people less resources at that point in time compared to the older servers, uh, to roll for new characters, roll for new resources, and to just in be general be less prepared than where the older servers were, because the older servers had more time to do their dailies, so they were able to accrue more resources over time. So usually, if you're trying to accelerate content to those older servers, you have to it's like give and take. You have to at least give people who are at least playing for free at least a bit of resources to strengthen their account, whether those resources are to build their account, their characters, their parties, and also give them resources to like pull for new characters that may have stronger move sets or more relevant move sets for upcoming content, uh, and so forth. It's a pretty basic concept on that front. So that's why there's always this stigma on this on acceleration for in some circles, where like if you're gonna do that, you're gonna have to um are you gonna give players the necessary resources to better equip themselves for this content that is now coming at a faster pace? Um, so in terms of Persona 5 The Phantom X, this gets really, really, really weird. And I don't want to try to get into the weeds too much because there's a lot to like say on through audio. But the short of it is, in China, Taiwan, and Korea, character banners were ran on a 2-week cycle where, let's say, version 1.0 Joker from Persona 5, his character banner runs for 2 weeks. Then version 1.1 comes, and then for that next 2 weeks, there's this character banner for a new original character named Yui, and that has like its own set of like content updates. Whether it's like they added like the conclusion of the second palace, and they added a new game mode, and so forth. Then in version 1.2, similar aspect where like they add new content. There's like, hey, there's like new social links that you can do, or new side quests that you can do. And also for version 1.2, there's a new original character, Marian, that comes out that runs on a 2-week cycle. So um much like other gotcha games, there are two types of banners and two types of characters that come out. It's not to say for all of them, but a general rule, there's limited characters and standard characters. Limited characters are the ones where they are only available to roll on for when their character banner is up. Once their character banner is gone, you are not able to roll for them until their banner is up again on like what is called a rerun for these limited characters. So they're pretty valuable in terms like, if you like that character, make sure you save up enough resources to get a guaranteed roll for them if it comes to that when their banner is up, because once it's gone, you have to wait until their banner is up again for a limited amount of time. Standard characters are characters that will always be in that character pool. So when you roll a 5-star, and it's not that limited character banner, those characters might show up instead, because there's always in the standard pool. There's also a standard character pool banner that's always in the game that has those characters as well, but no limited characters. And in Persona 5 The Phantom X, some characters start out on limited banners. A few of them, not all of them, a few of them start out on limited banners, but then get later added to the standard pool of characters after their version is done. So Marian, for instance, is one of these characters where she first starts out as a limited character that's available first on her in that when her character banner is introduced in version 1.2. But when version 1.3 starts, she's one of the very few characters in the game where she has moved over to the standard pool of characters, going from version 1.2 to 1.3. So and she's a very powerful character in terms of like she's a healer, and healers are always really good in turn-based RPGs. She's one of the more powerful ones in that regard because she gives buffs as well to your characters. And there are the way that this has been restructured in global. The way that banners are run for now is really really weird and inconsistent. So Joker in Persona from Persona 5 in the global server now runs for 4 weeks, which is good in the sense of like people have more time to save up resources, go through the content of the game, save up these resources to roll for him to get a better chance for rolling for him. So they don't feel that 2 week cycle squeeze. They have a full month to play at their own pace and get him before his banner goes, and they have to wait for a rerun. Um, so that's a major change, which is fine in that regard. But then, 2 weeks into the release of this game, while his banner is still running, they're adding 2 more character banners because they've merged the character banners of 1.1 and 1.2 now, in like they've now dropped in the same date with Yui and Marianne. They've been both dropped at the same date, but their duration is changed. Where Yui, much like Joker, now runs for 1 full month, where normally she'd only run for 2 weeks. And Marion, which is for many people the one that they want to roll for because she's a powerful healer, has good damage buffs, ranked very highly, and still very relevant in the older servers. So in general, she just have a very good character to have. She also comes in time with Yui, so they moved her banner up, but she only lasts for 2 weeks, unlike the other characters. And so that gives more pressure on people to roll for her during this time frame. And unlike the older servers, she's not immediately going to be added to the standard pool of characters after her 2 week limited banner ends. And this has severe implications on how this global server is being run compared to the older servers, because now you're giving people um like a lot of peer pressure to vote for her in this very very limited 2 week period, and they haven't been transparent on when she's going to be added to the standard pool of characters. My guess, and my educated guess, is she'll be added to version 1.3, but doesn't come out till like late July or early August. But that's an educated guess. They haven't conveyed that, and they're kind of trying to play people for fools of like, why don't you just like be more transparent about this? Because people are a lot of your player base is already educated on like, hey, this is how things were run back then. Why are you doing this now? And why are you being secretive about it? I mean, and the real answer is like they're trying to squeeze people out of their money for it to feel this pressure to go pull for her immediately and not be transparent about when she's going to be added to the standard pool of characters. Um, this has also gameplay implications as well in terms of like how you're progressing through your account, because there are these things called business plans in the game where it's basically a standard list of achievements of like, hey, get your main character level to 50, get your 3 weapons to level 50, get 2, 3, 4 characters to level 50 or 60, just standard achievements that you would normally do that give you resources as you're doing them. And as you're going through these business plans, they give like substantial rewards for completing them. So like the first business plan gives you a 5-star character selector between Anne, Ryuji, and Morgana. Um, People can freely select between them on who they want. Doing finishing business plan 2 gives you their 5-star weapons. You get a selector of which 5-star weapon you want for between those characters. All very good. But then business plan 3 and 4, which came later in the older servers, have been bumped up in the global servers, um, which is fine on paper, because you do get those resources earlier, but because of the whole limited and standard character situation with Marion, for instance, this gets really, really weird because the rewards for Business Plan 3 and 4, for Business Plan 3, you get a 5-star dupe selector. So you cannot use this to get a new character, but you can get a dupe of a character to further enhance their abilities for any of the standard characters in the pool at that time. and business plan form gives you a 5-star weapon selector for any of the standard character pools at the time. Because Marion is considered limited and not part of the standard character pool in our server right now, she does not get her dupe selector, or is not an option in the dupe selector, nor her 5-star weapon in those business plans, which is really, really, really bad in terms of like changing up how it was run before, because Marianne with her dupe plus her 5-star weapon will obviously make a good character even better. And that option was a lot, like, people who were free to play who didn't spend a cent on the game could get those without spending a cent on like getting those. Now they feel financial incentive to have to use their resources to get a dupe of her and of her 5-star weapon if they want, instead of getting them for free just by normally playing the game on those older servers. It's just like the very tip of the iceberg of like a lot of like issues with the global server compared to older servers in terms of like just bugginess. As James saw in his preview, those backloaded rewards, having those backloaded rewards on like those social link synergies means that people have less resources that they are allowed to play around with early on, and they're incentivized to have to put many, many, many more hours now into the game to even get like a smidge of those rewards that are now backloaded in those social links. So those reward distributions just like it's all fucked up. And in terms of like just general bugginess and like typo translations in the script, it's like it's very like inconsistent about that. Um and it's a lot. It's just like it's like a mountain, like there's a mountain of problems, some bigger than others, but it's very, very apparent that like just the global server compared to like the older servers is just being treated relatively poorly, and that's not something that you want to do, especially this early into the game's life cycle. Ideally, never. So I don't know if Sega or Atlas will even address that at all. I mean, people are trying to make themselves heard through like official surveys that they provide, trying to rate the game rating down both on the mobile stores and on Steam, trying to just get the message across like, hey, there's a lot of things about this game that's fucked up. Please let our voice be heard, and please address it, and please start, making amends this early into the life cycle before it just becomes, you know, a lost cause. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. So yeah, I mean that's just a small like insight on like this the situation of the game 2 weeks in. Um, every mobile game, uh, every live service game faces some amount of drama to some extent. Some more severe than others. So it's kind of unfortunately part of the expected life cycle for these kinds of games. But in this circle that I'm now familiar with, because I like playing the game. Like the gameplay experience of playing the game, I really, really enjoy it. The way that it's being handled and managed is like the absolute worst part of the game. Just downright awful. So it's like it's one of those weird things where like, man, I really enjoyed playing this game, but it just feels really fucked up to treat your player base like this.
Yeah.
This early in.
Yeah, that's
Can you do? Can you do?
yeah. I've said it on many times in the past. I've made my
Yeah.
opinion on these sorts of games like very clear, but even at the best of times I can always feel
Yeah.
like the monetization of these games and like the dark patterns, and it's just I can't deal with it. And
Yeah.
all you've said about the community though is very important. Not in a entirely related note, I've heard some rumblings about how Uma Musume, they want to speed things up to get global caught up with the Japanese version. It's like I wonder if they'll run into similar teething issues as things go on.
They inevitably will, because Sumo Musume is even more severe. They have a 4-year gap. I don't know what their plans are for in terms of like how far along, like if they want to catch up to the Japanese server or not. But if that is their aspirations over there, then they are really, really gonna have to like think about how to maintain a healthy lifespan in that game, because you're trying to close a 4-year gap. So what are the timetables you're working under? Like, if you want to bridge that 4-year gap, are you trying to do that at a 2-year time frame, or you're trying to do that in 6 months?
Are you going to give enough resources where
Exactly.
people can actually catch up? And it's like
Yes.
one of the one defenses of Uma Musume I've seen from folks that like, and I'll be blunt, seen so many people get into that game that aren't usually into mobile games has been a very conflicting feeling because of what that might mean in the long run. But seeing like one of the defenses of that being, oh well, it's a side games mobile game. It's very like lenient on resources. It's like, is that gonna be accurate forever? Probably not.
The Grand Blue people would like to will tell you different about like how side games is very up and down. It like side games is not the angel that you perceive it to be. It's very dangerous to perceive a company like that as like being your friend. These are
Yeah.
businesses that are looking to profit.
In an
And you should
ideal
not.
world, these types of games would be illegal.
Yeah. And like I'm not against them. I'm not against the concept, but I'm always tell people, just like, just be very aware about like the type of person that you are. If you know that you're a person that's like very, if your family has a history of addiction problems, if you yourself have problems with addictions in the past, then very much like be aware of that behavior for yourself, and ideally stay away if you have addiction problems, because that could really be damaging for you in the long run. Like, these are games that are seeking to try to make bank off of like any ways possible. They are not fair to you. They're not in your favor. They are not your friends. um be aware that ideally you are old enough to make decisions for yourself. Be
Yep.
aware, and to always know someone who is able to provide you a fair, unbiased, third-party opinion about your behavior and your patterns, and like say, hey, I think you need to. If you have a friend like that and you trust them, and if they tell you to stop, or just like, or limit your playtime or stay away, confide in that person, trust in that person, take them seriously.
Thank you, Josh, for going into the details. It sounds like it's a combination of the accelerated plan and the rate at which players are expected to progress in that game being misaligned, as well as just incongruences between the two servers of the game in terms of what is required of the player to progress. So, in terms of that just being completely misaligned, and
Yeah, I
as
think
someone
they, I
who's
think.
only dabbled in these, go ahead.
Mhm. Yeah, I just think they really need to like tighten up their communication chain on how they're running that game. Like, I think like especially the English comms for that game have been dire. And like a lot of just like a lot of silence, a lot of just not acknowledging issues, and even like when it's like releasing like an English version of the stream that they did. Of course, there's gonna be a timeline because they have to do translations for what was said. But even like during the when they put up like the English version of that stream, showing off the new version update of the game, like it came out, what, like, I want to say almost 17 hours or so after that original broadcast, and not all of it was even translated. Like, there'll be subtitles during that video, English subtitles that just say, in parentheses, comments about development, as the people are talking about the game. And it's just in parentheses, comments about development. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here then? Why are we doing this then? If you're not gonna like provide people with all the information that's being conveyed, then what are we doing? You can't just say in parentheses comments about development during that stream when people are relying on information about that game through that stream that don't understand Japanese. Like, huh? Like,
Yeah, like what it reminds me of that meme of that goose, like what comments? What comments chasing after the
it's there's so many problems at the moment that I wonder if there's gonna be a response. If there's gonna be no response, then best of luck. I'm best of luck, I guess.
We have a few other pieces of news that are updates to existing games. Each of these is pretty small. The recently released Wizardry Variants Daphne released late last year. It's a free-to-play game, 3D dungeon crawler based on the Wizardry IP. It added a couple classes, and I don't think anyone here is up to date on Wizardry Variants Daphne, but I just thought this was an interesting just kind of like snapshot into like where the video game space is right now. Like an IP that has been around for multiple decades, but also is still like a free to play live service, frequently updated game in this way. It just released on Steam earlier this year, but they added classes. They added like I thought they added like a new difficulty mode. Like I'm not familiar with the series. I'm reading through the patch notes here. Bonus banners, events. So like, yep, even Wizardry is kind of in that occupying that space right now. But
on the upside, there's gonna be a new anime based on Wizardry called like Blade and Bastard, I guess.
Oh really?
Yeah, so there's gonna be like a Wizardry based upcoming anime, and hopefully it's fucking awesome because I would love to see how they do that. So I'm down. On the upside, anime.
Steam is telling me that Wizardry Variants Daphne is similar to games you've played, like Expedition 33.
That's right, exactly like it.
But yeah, it looks like it's had a successful Steam launch. Steam reviews are still mixed, but as kind of a theme of the podcast, I guess, is that it's getting frequently updated. They've added a new class, they've added some new banner items. So cool to see that get some further support for a year past its release. Here's one that's not quite in the same vein, but later this month we're having the somewhat surprising specific Switch 2 version of Wild Hearts S, releasing on that console. We've talked a little bit about how it has the 4-player mode, and it's just slightly, a different product from the original release. It's got a free demo on the eShop for Switch 2 owners. Unfortunately, I think I've seen Cullen of all people tweeting about this, as well as a few others. Apparently that demo is an opportunity for improvement in terms of performance for this game. Mikhail, remind me, have you played the demo for Wild Hearts S on Switch 2? You have. All right, I guess this is my point to hand off to you.
Demo. Yeah, I've played 4 hours of the demo. And I was actually chatting with Oliver from Digital Foundry about it because I was a little baffled at some of the visuals, which, like some of the how it looks basically because
shadows
I was confused
are so
by
bad.
Yeah, it's so here's the thing, like just to give some background, this has a dog shit PC port which has barely improved since launch. The game on PS5 and Xbox Series X, if you play in performance mode, it's like 1080, 40 to 60 FPS, like in busy moments or whatever. The Series S version is like 900p 30 with massive lighting cutbacks. So when they announced this for Switch 2, I was like, how are you even going to do this? Like, it's not optimized on anything. It turns out completely like disabling most of the lighting, doing very low resolution textures to the point where like sometimes the snow on the ground is just a flat white surface, which I've seen happen 3 times now. And just generally, like, it's massively cut back, and for some reason they still left the frame rate uncapped. So while it can hit 60 FPS if you're looking at the ground, like, good job. Apparently I think that works on some people, because I've seen posts on Reddit with saying the game feels so good at 60 FPS in hunts, and I'm like, it's not even close to 60 FPS. Like, what are you doing? So the game is like, so first of all, I really liked Wild Hearts. I remember like talking to James about it. James reviewed the PC version, and I believe the main takeaway that time was like the PC port is not great, even though, and this was the one which had those AMD issues where it had that flickering or something for you, right? Yeah, so I think this and Wolong had these issues with James's hardware where it had these weird color squares or something. But yeah, it was just a very bad PC port. I think the Switch 2 version has some potential, but like not at this frame rate, which is all over the place. It's worse than Hitman on Switch, which is also not great. So yeah.
I will say that in docked mode, it's a lot more bearable, but in handheld mode, it's absolutely atrocious. I'll also say that visually, there's a couple of things that I wasn't really surprised about, like you said, because of some cutbacks. Like even on max settings, there was like some visual stuff in the PC version that was like kind of off-putting. at the best of times, it's I'm gonna just say this. I'm still interested in replaying it, but I don't think I'm gonna play it at all in handheld mode. In docked mode, I think I can stand it. But man, even though I was expecting it, let us turn off the sharpening filter. It's bad.
Yeah. It's like a new generation of Xenoblade 2, like Switch to Xenoblade 2, basically.
Exactly. It's like, and I'm sure you also expected it, but it doesn't make it feel any better.
No, it's just it's a bizarre thing because I re-downloaded the game on Steam Deck because it's unplayable on Steam Deck, but I haven't played it since launch. And if you run it at like the absolute lowest settings, you can get it to like maybe 30 FPS. But what you'll notice is the game's foliage and everything is still way higher than the Switch 2 version, even if you put it at the lowest settings on PC. So this is one of those situations where they had like a bespoke port with actual cutbacks for the hardware and not just running a high-end version on a handheld. So yeah, this is, I don't know about this. I really like Wild Hearts, but I don't know if I can tolerate this in handheld. It doesn't have VRR in docked, it doesn't have VRR in handheld. I don't know what to say about this. Like, maybe since Koei Tecmo is handling everything, we'll get an official soundtrack release. That would be the best possible outcome of this, because Hamauzu's soundtrack, it was never released. Barely any comments about it also, because like I think EA publishing or whatever. But I would like that to at least happen through this if that's like the end result. But yeah, I'd say that if someone is on the fence, try the demo, because save does carry over to the full version. And you can get quite a bit of time. It does support online, but you do need a Nintendo Switch online subscription, even though this is a demo for online play. So yeah.
Jeez. Lightning strikes thrice, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, again, I will say try the demo. If you're mostly going to play in docked mode, the performance isn't good, but at least in docked, it's about what I would say, like if you're playing Monster Hunter World on a PS4 Pro in performance mode. The frame rate is wildly all over the place, but it's mostly above 30 FPS. If you're able to deal with that, you can deal with the docked performance for Wild Hearts S. The handheld mode is an entirely different story.
Or
I think in the dock. Okay, go ahead.
You could play this little game called Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate on your Switch too. I hear it's a fantastic time and runs well.
I don't know if you reached the King Tusk in the Wild Hearts demo, but the frame
I
rate
did.
was nowhere. Yeah, so I was just doing it in multiplayer before the podcast, and I had like one person AFK, so like the people just blocked him on the thing, because 4-player multiplayer King Tusk was not holding 30 FPS. And this is like the opening area, so when you get to like Lava Back and Golden Tempest and all, I think it's gonna drop to the 20s over there docked. But yeah, this is something which I don't know. I might give it a shot. Who knows? Like it's what, 10 days away or something. We'll see how things go.
Dude, I think it's freaking awesome that the one of the big new features in this game, the 4-player mode, is like, yeah, we're gonna add a new feature that this system cannot fucking run at all.
Yeah.
Oh, I will say one thing though. The HD Rumble which they added is really good. Like that's probably the main compliment I can give the thing, that they did a very good job with that at least.
I think it's funny that the HG Rumble there's like no rumble at all until you get the Karakuri.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And Wild Hearts is a game that I really enjoyed as well, but like I don't think the 3 to 4 player really changes much. Like I played it mostly single player, so I don't know like how much of an impact that would make. And you know, Cullen is like the biggest Switch evangelist out there, and was a little bit disappointed in the demo. Of course, it is just a demo. We'll see how the full game runs in a couple of weeks.
It's obviously the final build.
Yeah, a good point. Speaking about Switch 2 ports, we've kind of talked about the context around this one a fair bit a few months ago back when it was first announced. This is Ys 10 Proud Nordics. Of course, was announced very shortly after the global Western release of Ys 10 Nordics. We've kind of got all the context around there. Talked about in terms of the unfortunate timing of all that. But Kite and Mikhail did tag team on an article talking about Proud Nordics, specifically its Switch 2 version. will supposedly run at up to 120 FPS in prioritized performance mode. So that's something that still feels a little bit illegal. Talking about the Switch 2, and Metroid Prime 4 was, I think, the first coining of that phrase. But for those that haven't played East 10 or are planning to revisit East 10 on the Switch 2, the Proud Nordics, of course, this is specific to Japanese media. So Western media on this is still, as far as I know, non-existent, right? For the Proud Nordics update.
Yeah, there's no official
Yeah.
release in the West
Mhm.
announcement as of yet.
But Kite did go into some detail, and I know Mikhail, you helped as well put together the English article on RPG site about like what exactly is Proud Nordics. Is it going to be meaningful? Like how big of a jump is it? Some of the bullet points here that you kind of summarized in the article. The new storyline is completely separate from the main story. It can be done at any time. The outlet recommends doing them in parallel because you can progress in both in either way and bring it back to the other. So that's kind of interesting. I'm looking at here. There's a Coliseum mode. There's a whole timed score attack involving racing. And
everyone loves the ships
and
in East 10, I hear. So
yeah,
great.
I was gonna say an end game feature for naval battles. I'm like, excellent. We all needed. But in terms of like
That
what the
is
new
exciting.
content is, it sounds like it's like on a parallel, almost like Shin Megami Tensei 5, but no, it's not even like that because that's you pick one or the other. You've got two parallel stories that you can like toggle between. At least that's the way it's summarized here.
So it's like East 9. I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose because it's kind of got the Monstrum story versus the current story.
I'm super excited for it because while I did enjoy East 10, one of my main complaints was obviously not enough visual variety. That was really the main thing. We already have seen that the new content is adding in quite a bit more visual variety. There's an actual lava area, which felt especially egregious when the boot up screen on PS5 showed an erupting volcano and we never actually saw one in the base game. So there's that. There's obviously more forested areas. It's like that alone is going to help quite a bit. The new gameplay stuff seems interesting. This really does, to me, feel like the sort of jump that we got when Ys 8 released on Vita and then it released on PS4. While I loved Ys 8 on Vita, I don't think it would be anywhere near as critically acclaimed and beloved if most people played the Vita version instead of the later PS4 version that was the basis for the PC and Switch releases as well, and the PS5 release. So I'm excited for this. The one thing I was worried about that I was going to deal with was, if it was the case, was I didn't think it was going to be in 60 FPS even. I thought it was going to be 30 FPS based off all of the trailers they released, which is weird that if 60 was the baseline, they didn't have the trailers run at 60 when the original releases trailers ran at 60. I don't know. Made me worried for nothing. Falcom, why do you do this? But yeah, I'm excited to replay this. I'm getting kind of pumped. Maybe it'll somehow be my favorite in the series. Probably not. That'll still probably be Ys 8, but I'd love to be wrong. Man, though, it just sucks that Ys 9 was never able to get something like this when it really needed it.
Yeah, I definitely want an excuse to replay Ys 9, but it needs more than just getting a bare bones PS5 version from NIS America, which added nothing and didn't fix the draw distance or anything. But yeah, for Proud Nordics, I don't know, I'm excited. It's a bit unfortunate that it's a key card because I was gonna import it, but now I'm not gonna import it. I will probably wait because it's releasing I don't know if it's a busy period or not, but I think I'm going to be playing a lot of stuff at that time. So I'll take a call like based on what happens with it. I think the main takeaway is that they said up to 120 FPS, so people should not assume 120 FPS. And also the eShop got updated with some new screenshots, and they kind of don't look that much of an upgrade over the Switch version, which is kind of disappointing because I thought this would be quite a big jump. But maybe like you said, the new upgrade is just in the new story content area. Maybe, who knows, we'll see closer to launch.
The next set of news here is a whole bunch of trailers. So again, we'll just kind of tackle through these one by one. We talked about Square Enix released kind of a montage celebratory trailer for Final Fantasy IX's 25th anniversary. We did get a new trailer for the upcoming Shuten Order. This game has quickly, in the last couple of months, been going headfirst into its media blitz as it releases in September, so just under 2 months away. This most recent trailer talks about 5 different gameplay. They call it game systems, but it really seems like when I saw this as the title, like discusses 5 gameplay systems, I'm thinking more in the terms of like what we, the player, like how we interact with the game. But this isn't really talked about like in the game itself, 5 different ministries that each have a different focus. One's like mystery adventure, one is visual novel, one is stealth action. So I don't know like if this is like deliberately going to force the protagonist to kind of take on these different roles as they go through the story. I just don't know enough about this game to really dive into it, but the way they've presented it here is pretty unique and different. So it's still a shorter trailer though, so it kind of goes into these really quickly about like who the different ministers are and what their focus is. But yeah, each one kind of has a different gameplay system tethered to it. Other trailers that we've got, in the exact opposite of Shuten Order, the Gothic remake, which feels like it's been in development for forever, has very infrequently done its little update videos. This one is the first in a few months, called The Making of Gothic 1 Remake Art Vision. And these videos are longer, like dev diaries about what they're doing to preserve the feel of the original game with the remake. Even though the original creators are not, as far as I can tell, involved with this, THQ Nordic just kind of gobbled it up during that big Embracer Group IP vortex of the early 2020s. And one of the ones they got was Gothic, and now they're working with Alchemia Interactive to make the remake. But yeah, just kind of toggling between what Gothic 3 2002 looked like versus, sorry, what Gothic 2000 looked like versus the remake in 2025. Honkai Star Rail is getting Saber as a crossover character. I'm not like, I look at this, I'm like, I didn't know that was happening, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I think our banner's up now. Like the whole Fate Stay Night collaboration is like in full swing in that game right now. So, you know,
Mm.
everyone's happy.
The upcoming another September release. September is going to be a busy month. Another September release. Toa and the Guardians of the Sacred Tree is going through its different, not character trailers, but like just story snippets, vertical slices in trailer form. This one's doing Shinju Village, which is like a forest village in the game. So it talks about the characters in that region of the game. Is this our? I'm trying to see like the different. This is our first one in this Toa Talk series, Toa Talk trailers, I believe. So I'm guessing we're going to get a whole bunch more in this kind of style as we get closer to the mid-September release.
I think there was a previous Toa Talk around the preview embargo.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to. I still try to dissociate this game from like Yasha because when I look at the trailer, like showcase all the systems, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like Yasha. I'm like, I mean, I tried not to associate it with Yasha, but it's difficult not to.
Trails in the Sky, first chapter, of course, another big September release, is getting its character trailers. We've talked about, I think, the first 4: Joshua, Estelle, Sherazard, and Oliver. It's got the newest trailer, both Japanese and English, for Kloe Rinz, of course, big character in that whole trilogy, and a sampling of her voice acting both in English and Japanese, and that part of the story. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know what to say. It looks great. It looks really faithfully recreated. I'm excited to replay it. Just same as every time they show this game.
They need to calm down with some of the scenes that they show in the trailers, though. That like for newcomers, I guess. Like
yeah. The one thing I will say is that the English voice acting is coming across weird to me in the trailer, mainly because, as far as I can tell, all these trailers have the same like backing track, or maybe the same library of backing tracks, and then they just have the character lines like overlaid on top of that outside of the context in which they're originally spoken. So it comes across a little flat to me. But I've seen too many times where the trailer dialogue feels weird, but then in game it feels fine. So it's kind of where I'm at for the
almost
English
always the
voices
case.
in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. I'm making sure I didn't skip any accidentally. But that's it for just trailers this week. So lots of trailers for upcoming September releases. I'm guessing that'll be kind of the case as we go into through July and into August. Kind of our bi-weekly sales update for Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. It has reached the 1.2 million copy threshold. And in addition to that, it will get a Switch physical edition in Japan. I believe the way that Mikhail has put this together, that it is a true physical copy and not a key card. I'm just reading through the fine text to make sure that's the case.
Yeah, it's a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. It's on the key card itself. Brownie points. Like absolute brownie points. Like genuinely.
At level 5 feels like they've done everything right with this game. Go ahead.
It's so crazy that 2 months ago we were pretty much everyone on this podcast, with understandable reason, were worried that this was going to bomb and it was going to be the end of level 5. And they pulled off the reversal of the decade.
Yeah, well, I kneeled pretty hard, but now they have the fucking Inazuma 11 gargantuan
God game, yeah,
the super game. Man, I simultaneously excited and worried, I guess. It's gonna be a while.
I think the thing that's most exciting about this announcement of a Switch 2 edition, like a proper game card for Fantasy Life I on Switch 2, theoretically, if it doesn't get delayed, which with level 5, it's probably more of a certainty that it will than it won't. This year, we'll get a new Professor Layton on Switch 1 and Switch 2. There's every possibility that we'll get a proper Switch 2 edition, like physical game card of the new Professor Layton, which that's awesome if that happens.
Dude, I just looked at the fucking Inazuma 11 Steam page. And it's like it says 5 weeks away. I'm like, it's already 5 weeks away.
Yeah. Well, that was our one sales update. Speaking of what's shortly upcoming, a few release dates here. Nothing big, but a few small things. Wargroove 2, indie kind of Tactics Advance, not Tactics Advance. What's that series on the game on the GBA?
Advance Wars.
That's it. Advance Wars. The Advance Wars that came out in 2023 is coming to mobile with full crossplay with the Switch, Xbox, and PC versions on July 30th. This one's kind of a weird. I shouldn't say weird. This is a game we have not covered before, but Kite has always been really good about finding these interesting games and making sure we cover them, regardless of whether or not the precedent exists. A game called Dungeon Stalkers is releasing for PC via Steam Early Access on August 13th. And the reason why this is kind of interesting is that it is described like an extraction shooter, only in like a high fantasy setting, like, mages and bards and warriors and wizards. So, and the you can kind of see it if you look at the screenshots. Again, it's Dungeon Stalkers. So, not familiar with the game. First time we've covered it on this podcast, but kind of an interesting idea of like, why not an extraction shooter set in a fantasy setting? Available only PC at the time, early access in less than a month. So, there it is. And then lastly, Metal Slug Tactics, released in late 2024, also coming to mobile, iOS and Android, through Crunchyroll. So a couple mobile ports for some existing Tactics games.
I don't like that things are just releasing like exclusively to the Crunchyroll Game Vault on these mobile releases. I
guess I don't know what that means. Like, does that mean like, is it like the Netflix games app?
Yeah, kinda. You have to have a Crunchyroll membership, I guess. I think it has to be like a higher tier, one of the more advanced tiers, not the basic membership, to access the Game Vault. It's like, okay, it's almost like the Apple Arcade problem.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Of like, just why not just like really like I of course obviously have like a lot of contract agreements and stuff, but like once it's off the Game Vault, once it's unavailable the Game Vault, then what? But it's once again it's like the Apple Arcade problem too.
Yeah, can I just give you $10 or $15 and just purchase the game to have on my phone? That'd be nice.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And that's all I had for this week. So good to be back. Good to catch up with all these interesting titles in September. A lot of these were ones that I have not really kept good tabs on, so it's kind of good to retouch on them and remind myself all of what's coming out in the next couple months. August is still a little bit quieter, but that's how we get opportunities to visit games like Blue Dragon Plus, or even revisit games like Tainted Grail, or I want to get to the Oblivion remaster still, so maybe look forward to that. Otherwise, I'm gonna look at the calendar and see what are we looking at potentially for discussion topics for next week. We have Neverwinter Nights 2, the enhanced edition's coming out. So I'm probably won't have time to get to that as it releases, but it'll be interesting to see what the reception is. Wu Chang Fall and Feathers is probably the big one, but that'll be 2 weeks away, I believe, before we can talk about that.
I'll play Donkey Kong and discuss whether or not we should count it as an RPG.
There you go. When does that come out?
That comes out next week, and that's only half a
Really?
joke. There's gear with proper stats. There's like skill points. There's I don't know.
I've been out of the loop on that. I just assumed that was a holiday game, but no, you're right. It's next week.
Yeah,
Damn.
we'll see. I don't know. We'll check it out, and they're very interested in that. There's a Steam version of the Madoka Magica Gacha game. The Steam version's coming out next week. It's gonna be hot topic. Everyone's gonna be playing it. It's gonna sell a good gajillion copies.
I don't think anyone's gonna even realize that launch when everyone's still getting really into horse racing.
Yeah, there's Shadow Labyrinth coming out next week. I'm actually kind of curious about that. It comes out like next Friday. Like to me, that's like such a weird, still bizarre concept. I know barely anything about it. I hope it's cool. I don't know. It's kind of nice to
Adam,
see that.
did we get anyone to cover this Eden Zero game?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, we did. Okay, so at least we'll have that on the site potentially. Okay, I remember that was kind of a big black hole at one point. We're like, what is this going to be?
It could have been you, Brian. You could have been the Eden Zero head.
Then I couldn't tell you about like badass King Arthur.
That's true.
But yeah, all the review for Tainted Grail, the review for Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, James's two articles from Anime Expo are all up on the site, rpgsite.net. Just hit that articles tab. You should be able to see those. You can follow RPG Site on all the social media networks. Just search for RPG Space Site, and you should be able to find us. discord.gg/RPG Site. If you listen to this podcast through any podcast service, Spotify, Apple Podcast, leave us leave us a rating. We love to see those. I believe that covers everything. So until you hear from us next time, stay safe, take care. I'll talk to y'all later.
If you've reached this part of the podcast and you're playing Horse Girls, tell us about your Horse Girls experience. We'd love to hear them.